Sun Woon becomes one of the gods and now has to choose his first starting race. At first, he considers the frogmen since he received insect-related powers, but he quickly drops that idea. Their tribes number over 500, and with such a massive population, influencing them would be way too difficult right now. So instead, he starts looking for a smaller race in trouble. That's when he notices a group of expelled lizard men, and they're perfect. They're weak, exhausted, wounded, and mostly elderly. Cast out from their lands, they've completely lost hope. For Sunun, this is the ideal starting point to conquer the world. Before all of this, Sunun was an unbeatable player in the strategy game Perished World for many years. One day, after a final match, he suddenly pulled straight into the game. And he isn't alone. The best players from other worlds are dragged in as well. Their mission is simple: rule civilizations as gods and lead them to ultimate domination. The last god standing becomes the true god of this world, gaining everything. Those who fail face total death. Back to the lizard men. Given their current condition, Sun Woon can easily become their god. All it takes is a single miracle. And he decides to start with the weakest one of all, a wounded lizard man barely able to keep up with the tribe. As the injured and starved lizard men force their way through the desert, they all freeze in shock when they see an injured animal lying helplessly on the ground, basically served up for them to devour. The desperate lizard men don't even think for a second before jumping onto the unsuspecting prey, going absolutely batshit crazy, wanting to have it all for themselves. The elderly and sick in the back feel utterly crushed, knowing there won't be anything left for them to eat. The healthy lizard men tear through all the flesh and the tasty parts, leaving nothing but bones behind. The greedy bunch even decide to nibble on the leftover bones until one of the benevolent lizard men stops them. He grabs all the remaining bones and offers them to the sick and old ones to eat. Those poor guys are grateful even for bones, eating as if it's the last meal of their lives. The healthy lizard men feel dissatisfied by their benevolent friend's gesture. For them, letting the old and sick eat such insubstantial scraps is a waste, since they're not going to survive for long anyway. Their wounds have only gotten worse. It's a miracle they're even alive at this point. But the benevolent lizard man reminds them of the time when one of the injured, namely Rockrak, risked his life and defended them against a saber-tooth. So instead of being selfish, they should be grateful. Still, it doesn't change the fact, at least to the healthy lizard men, that injured and sick people are eventually going to die. They keep arguing back and forth until night descends and everyone finally falls asleep. While everyone sleeps soundly, Rockra struggles with the rotting wound on his shoulder. As he groans, he notices a blue butterfly seemingly trying to get his attention. Eventually, Rak stands up and begins following the beautiful critter. A few of the lizard men notice Rak leaving and assume he's probably abandoning the lounge for good. But Rak, he's simply driven by curiosity. He's noticed something peculiar up above and wants to see what it is exactly. Maybe he's imagining things since he's the only one who reacted to it. Even if it's just an illusion, he wants to check. And once he gets up there, he finds an entire buffet of beetles stuck together. Rak is pleasantly shocked, realizing he's found enough food for everyone to feast on. With this first revelation, Nebula is one step closer to acquiring a race. The amount of beetles he sent is enough to feed the entire lounge for a few days. It's quite surprising to Nebula that these guys are sharing their blessing with each other without making any fuss. This just shows how strong-willed these people are. Eventually, Rockra decides to put his faith in the god who fed them. He names him the Nameless Beetle God. This comes as yet another surprise to Nebula, who was sure his god name would be related to butterflies. Nonetheless, he's happy to acquire a race and especially happy with this candidate named Rock, a kind-hearted and selfless lizard man who chose to share the blessing with everyone. Nebula is convinced this guy will become a crucial asset in his civilization building. A few days pass, and the lizard men finally find their sanctuary. The wound that had been plaguing Rockra has finally healed too. It's all thanks to the blessing of the Nameless Beetle God. Or at least, that's what Rak believes. He even tries convincing others about the existence of the benevolent one who descended these blessings upon him. His wound healing overnight is proof enough for him. Hell, his shoulder scar is even covered with black scales similar to a beetle. Now, with these blessings in tow, Rak is confident in himself and wants to go buffalo hunting. To prove his newfound strength and the power of the blessings his fellows are struggling to believe. He takes his stance and chucks the spear as hard as he can, obliterating the target tree. Everyone's jaw hit the floor after seeing this display of astronomical strength that practically transcended lizard-man physiology. To understand how they even found this place and why Rak is so dead set on hunting a buffalo, we jump back a few days. Rak is once again following those same hallucination-like visions, and the group is excited at the prospect that they might hit yet another beetle jackpot. They eagerly follow the path only Rak's visions have been able to notice, but Rak warns them that winter is coming and the beetles keep appearing from the direction of the cold winds. If they keep going that way, they might freeze to death. This deeply concerns his fellow lizardmen, who wonder if they should even be following the path Rak's visions are pushing him toward. Rak himself can't confirm whether the visions are leading them anywhere meaningful. Since they have no alternatives, he can only rely on the visions and keep following. Turns out the reason Rak doubts these visions is because Nebula still lacks enough faith. If it weren't for Rak, Nebula doubts he'd be able to influence anything at all. For now, all he can hope is that Rocker keeps believing. Only then will he be able to lead them toward an unimaginable future. Despite not knowing where the visions truly lead, Rockront continues following them and they eventually arrive at a sanctuary. This unexpected salvation spikes everyone's faith. The nameless beetle god has led them to their haven. Nebula's god level jumps by 1, officially making it level 2. His sub-area also increases by 1. This level up unlocks a new skill, Insect Sanctification. This skill lets Nebula choose and designate a priest, and obviously Rockrak is the only fitting candidate for this role. The blessing bestowed upon Rock will help him spread the god's will. Later that night, as Rockra sleeps peacefully among his kin, he hears someone calling his name and drifts into a dream world. There, he meets a mysterious person who extends a hand forward. As Rak reaches out to grasp it, a water buffalo skull suddenly appears in his hand. Rak instinctively understands what he's supposed to do. He raises the skull and adorns the mysterious figure's head with it, and just like that, the nameless beetle god finally manifests before Rak's eyes. It's his first time seeing him, and by morning, he tells everyone about the strange dream. In turn, his kin ask about the god's intentions, and why Rak believes this mysterious deity is asking for a buffalo sacrifice. To hunt a buffalo, they'll need to venture into deep wilderness, which is an extremely dangerous risk, but they can't forget that the one demanding a buffalo is the same being who led them to safety. Still, one lizard man continues to voice his disapproval, pointing out that a hunt like this would require the entire lounge to participate, putting everyone in danger. Even Ray admits he can't afford to endanger the entire lounge. That said, the hunt will still happen, but he'll go alone. Back in the present, right after Ray-Rak showcases his newfound strength coursing through his body, strong enough to obliterate trees, the entire lounge is in pleasant disbelief. The wise old lizard even questions the sheer absurdity of it all. Rockarak was once a guy on the brink of death with a rotting wound. But now Bro is out here smashing trees with javelin throws. As if luck is on their side, Rocker spots an entire herd of buffalo down the hill. It's nothing short of a miracle to see buffalo here. A buffalo herd always migrates to the same place they are already familiar with, so the fact that this herd got lost and wandered here doesn't make sense at all. Rak doesn't bother with the nitty-gritty explanations and charges forward like a starved beast craving blood. All he cares about is hunting and feeding the people he cares about. With a single swing, he strikes one buffalo right in the skull, taking it down instantly. Rock becomes the trailblazer for the lounge, giving everyone the confidence to storm the field with their weapons. Later that day, the whole lounge gathers, stacks all the buffalo skulls, and hangs an entire buffalo upside down as a sacrifice. With everything prepared, Rocker begins the prayers. Everyone joins in, praying for the benevolent nameless beetle god to accept their sacrifices. Nebula watches everything from the skies. The offering is somewhat half-baked, but what truly matters is their sincerity, and the staggering amount of faith Nebula just received proves exactly that. That's why Nebula isn't complaining. Honestly, it's pretty decent for a novice priest. Nebula definitely deserves that juicy faith boost, especially considering how much time and effort he's poured into these lizard men. Right now, the real problem is figuring out how the lizard men will sustain themselves. Since Nebula isn't the god of grass or wilderness, he can't make grass grow or produce water out of thin air. But keep in mind that he is the god of insects. Previously, he used insects, mainly grasshoppers. He used these critters to destroy grasslands and lure the buffalo out of the mountains. But at the moment, the lizard men have zero awareness of how to raise animals. They literally ate even the baby buffalo instead of raising it. Then again, Nebula knows expecting cattle-raising knowledge at this stage is way too much. This oasis also isn't strong enough to support a large population in the future. The lizard men will only survive a few years if things continue like this. Right now, they know nothing about farming or herding, making their future look bleak. Of course, Knowledge and skills aren't things you can magically learn overnight, and teaching them directly would break the rules. It's going to take time, but Nebula is certain they'll eventually get on the right track. He initiates the process by bestowing a small blessing on his current priest. The following day, after the sacrifice, Rak is examining the altar made from buffalo bones. Last night he had a very disturbing dream, one that felt vague yet deeply unsettling. When his friend Zal asks further about it, Rock explains that in the dream the altar trembled precariously. Their oasis was drying up. There were no fish left to catch, and the ground had been over-farmed to the point that growing more plants had become impossible. But Zale believes they have nothing to worry about since their god is clearly taking good care of them. Rak also believes in their god wholeheartedly, and he has immense confidence. But what if the things shown in that dream were actually warnings? If they fail to understand these signs and don't act accordingly, it would be no different from going against their god's will. That's exactly what's making Rakra's nerves snap. As he perches atop the altar, he notices something alarming and calls Zale over to look. Far off in the distance, they see a group marching straight toward their oasis. Rocker immediately realizes why the altar trembled in his dream. Judging by the formation and the dust cloud, this herd of lizard men heading their way is definitely not good news. Rocker and his friend instantly recognize them. Their blue scales, their hulking size, and the beasts they're riding. It all signals one thing: the Blue Leather Tribe, the very same tribe that stole their previous home and forced Rock's group into exile. From the looks of it, these guys are searching for the next place to occupy and destroy. Since the oasis isn't visible from afar, they've coincidentally marched right in this direction. Rak can only hope they'll pass by without noticing anything. Or so they thought, until a loudmouthed scout from the oasis shouts at the Blue Leather Tribe, immediately grabbing their attention. They've messed up, but Rak refuses to see this as misfortune. Maybe this is actually for the better. Maybe it's a mission their god wants them to accomplish. A mission to assimilate the lizard men captured by the Blue Leather Tribe. It's a mission to merge the Blue Leather Tribe with his people. It has to be the god's will. Otherwise, there's no way their deity would drive their old rivals straight toward the oasis. And when Rakara spots those familiar blue butterflies drifting around, his suspicion turns into certainty. This is divine will, and he dares not question it. His job is simple: play his role as the god's apostle, cutting to Nebula, watching everything unfold. He's feeling immensely proud of Rak. Rak must emerge victorious over the Blue Leather Tribe and merge them into the fold, boosting population growth and triggering new advancements. What fascinates Nebula most is Rak's decision-making. He chose this path by himself. This shows Rak as a creature of powerful will. Oh, and by the way, he's already level 14. Even when facing an enemy group, he still thought about the possibility of allying with them. That strong will makes him a prime candidate for future leadership. All Nebula needs to do now is strengthen Rak's faith enough to ensure his decisions naturally align with Nebula's interests. Cutting to the Blue Leather Tribe's leader, the fat bastard scoffs and asks if the oasis belongs to them. Our lizard men fire back with double the scorn, telling these hobos to get the hell out of their turf. The fat ass follows up with another stupid question, asking what's so special about this place. Rocker steps forward and calmly explains that this place is where their god resides, the realm of the nameless beetle god. As expected, the chieftain scoffs again, not understanding why a god would talk to a barbarian like Rak. He's done talking. He orders Rak to leave immediately. If they walk away peacefully, he promises they won't face catastrophic consequences. Rakra snaps back with full confidence, making it crystal clear that the Blue Leather Tribe can't defeat them, no matter their numbers. Of course, the chieftain thinks Rakra is insane for ignoring the overwhelming disadvantage he's facing. But Rak keeps that sassy, confident smile and simply challenges the leader instead of wasting breath. Unsurprisingly, the big boss is pissed at being challenged by someone he considers beneath him. Rak, meanwhile, calls the Blue Leather Tribe a bunch of homeless lambs with nowhere to return to. That's why he's giving them a chance, an opportunity to live under the god's blessing. The fat bastard cracks up in laughter as if Rak just told the funniest mom joke ever. He doesn't buy this god nonsense at all. To him, the one with strength rules, and Rak is heavily outnumbered, yet Rak's will doesn't waver. He takes his stance and makes it clear he won't falter, not when he fully trusts his god. Losing his patience, the Blue Leather Chieftain charges forward at top his beast, ready to crush Rak in one blow. Rak prays for his god to grant him the strength he needs to defeat the foe in front of him. As the beast lunges closer, Rak's only weapon completely shatters, and the monster swings its paw once again to crush him. At that exact moment, Nebula receives a system notification about the clash between two civilizations. Then another notification follows, officially recognizing these lizard men as Nebula's tribe, since he has nurtured them closely and they've lived in his domain for quite some time. This unexpected development unlocks a brand new skill, one that's a complete game-changer for the current battle. When Nebula activates it, we cut back to Rak just as the strike is about to land. But right before the impact, Nebula descends into Rak's body. The beast's paw slams down, amusing the blue leather chieftain, who believes Rak has been flattened, but his joy dies instantly when he spots Rak standing far away, having dodged the attack at the last possible second. Nebula is inside him now, granting a massive power boost and agility Rak never had before. The chieftain attacks again, claiming this time he won't miss. Nebula activates his foresight and sizes up the fat lizard's stats. Despite being arrogant and full of himself, the chieftain's stats are painfully ordinary, weak enough for Rak to handle even without Nebula. But there's a problem. The beast he's riding won't be easy to deal with, especially while fighting the chieftain simultaneously. That beast is known as the Man and Drake. This is exactly why Nebula is possessing Rak. The skill grants Rak a new stat known as Divinity, represented by the letter D. A single D equals 200 attribute points. Since Rak has 3 Ds attached with every attribute, his every attribute, including strength, jumps from 30 to 630. That's how Rakara sprints toward his enemy at lightning speed and literally flips the massive Drake over with his bare hands without breaking a sweat. The onlookers are left with their eyes popping out of their skulls. This reaction is exactly what Nebula expected. Even the fat-ass chieftain is in disbelief, refusing to accept the reality in front of him. He assumes it must be some kind of trick. After crawling out from beneath his toppled Drake, he lunges at Rak with a dagger aimed at his chest. But Rak ends the fight with a humiliating, ego-shattering slap straight across the bastard's face. The slap is as overpowering as my mother's, instantly knocking the strength out of the chieftain's knees. With their leader down, Rak dares the rest to step forward if they feel brave enough. Just as Nebula predicted, everyone drops their weapons and surrenders politely to Ray. Once it's over, Rak regains control of his body. He's in complete denial of what just happened. The only explanation he can think of is that his god possessed him. Later that day, the newly joined lizard men gather around the altar and finally get to eat. They're shocked when they realize Rocker's group are the same people who vanished into the wilderness long ago. Their scale color changed due to the cruel conditions they faced. The gray lizard men proudly recount their journey, how they followed the nameless beetle god who guided them to this sanctuary. Otherwise, they would have died, lost in the wilderness, one by one. The blue lizards find the idea of having a benevolent god quite fascinating. Honestly, they wouldn't have believed any of this crap if Rak hadn't displayed that inhumane strength. Strength that clearly transcends the norm. Cut to Rak and his friend Zale. The friend is seriously worried about everything that's happened with the Blue Leather tribe. Because of this new tribe joining the Oasis, their population has exploded, almost a 600% increase. At this rate, it won't be long before this place runs out of resources, putting them back in the same miserable situation they once escaped from. But it seems Rak already knows what they're supposed to do. They're leaving this place. Of course, Zale hates that idea. They can't just wander the wilderness again without a proper destination. But Rock believes their god has already expressed his will. The answer to Zale's worries lies within their newly joined brothers. They will become the catalyst, and through unity, they will figure out the way forward. The next day arrives. Some of the gray lizard men are trying to tame this blue leather trib's deceased leader beast. By the way, one of the big lizard men's name is Yuri. Despite their best effort, they aren't able to tame this crazy fella. Right then, Rak arrives, making that Drake sweat under his familiar presence. The creature recalls getting knocked out with a single swing, a haunting memory that makes the poor guy shudder and step back, but Rak is just here to feed this big dude. He offers the creature a few roots to feast on. Of course, the creature hesitates, but eventually starts nibbling on the roots, much to everyone's shock. After all, they'd been trying their ass off to tame this guy. Yet, in Rak's presence, the monster instantly switches to friendly mode, cozying up to him like they've been buddies forever. Rak then offers him more radishes to eat. Since the god chose to spare this creature, there has to be something significant about him, or at least that's what Rock believes. That's exactly why he's honoring his god's will by feeding and caring for this creature. After finishing everything, the creature looks around for more. But Rock won't cave into Manoon's desires. He must learn to be patient. The creature nods in approval and reluctantly steps back, doing exactly what his new master wants. With that, Rak proceeds to leave, telling his fellows to inform him if Manoon causes another scene. It looks like Yuri has learned something from this situation, but decides to voice it later. We then cut to Rak interviewing a blue lizard man. Turns out this blue guy has the skills to craft weapons. It was their leader' weird and stringent rules that held him back. If he'd been given proper resources, he could have made even better weapons. The current issue is wood availability. He used leftover wood for fuel needed for weapon making. After gathering all the details about the weapons and materials, Rak dismisses the man, promising to meet him tomorrow with a final decision. The next lizard man to step forward is an old guy missing his left hand. He introduces himself as a wanderer, someone who drifts from place to place, searching for a home. During his travels, he learned how to identify pathways. There are lands he discovered with enough natural resources to sustain their current population. Though he isn't sure if those lands are still unoccupied, there's a good chance other wanderers or tribes might have already claimed them. Rak isn't fazed by this. If those occupiers are hostile, he plans to defeat them and take their land. The wanderer acknowledges Rak's decision and is willing to trust whatever he has planned. Rak follows up with another question, asking if he'd also be willing to trust and believe in the same god. The wanderer responds by pointing at the sky. He puts his faith in the stars. At night, he explains, if one learns to understand the paths of the stars, they can never lose their way. Rak promises to put his faith in the stars, too. If the wanderer manages to prove his point in the next few days, the wanderer then spends some time familiarizing Rak with ropes. Once he's done dumping his knowledge about stargazing, he wants Rak to observe the stars at the same time the following night. Right then, Yuri arrives to meet Rak. He's clearly here with something on his mind. For a moment, Rak suspects it's about Manon, but it's actually not. Though Yuri does share one interesting tidbit. Man may look a bit unhappy with the food, but he's as docile as a dog if you bring him his meals on time. The real reason for Yuri's visit is that he's heard rumors that everyone will soon be traveling out of this place, and for that, they must prepare food so they don't starve during the journey. Today, Yuri noticed how Rak managed to tame a voracious drake like it was nothing more than a pet dog. This sparked an idea in him. They could also try taming those buffaloes and secure their food supply. With that epiphany, Rak's tribe discovers a new survival skill, livestock farming. You see, humans throughout history followed two major subsistence strategies. The first is agriculture, and the second is livestock production. If Nebula had to choose between the two, he'd go for agriculture since it's easier to sustain long-term. History proves it. Our ancestors and early civilizations all settled near rivers. However, the species Nebula rules over isn't human. The lizard men have strong physiques and natural environmental adaptability. Given that the lizard men would perform far better in livestock production than in agriculture, furthermore, to advance, they must learn to make and use tools. And as we speak, that one blue lizard man with smithing skills is trying to forge a weapon out of iron. Nebula is glad they can already produce primitive iron tools. Though weaker than bronze, it works for now. In fact, it's a huge leap for a tribe that previously relied only on stone. Another thing that caught Nebula's attention is the guy with astronomy knowledge. Though the lizard man's astronomy is just beginner-level stuff, Nebula hopes the stargazer will expand his knowledge further. Later that night, Rak looks up at the sky, pleasantly realizing the stargazer was right. The stars really are a heavenly compass. He finally understands the significance of astronomy and how it can guide their future. A while later, everyone gathers around the altar where Rakra delivers the depressing news. He starts by reminding them how much time has passed since the Benevolent One brought them to this land. Not only that, but the Almighty also reunited them with their other brothers. The Benevolent One chose to save their brethren instead of letting them wander into the wilderness and die. The god knew there was strength and unity, otherwise he wouldn't have accepted them into his sanctuary. However, Rak believes it's finally time they leave this place and expand their influence. He calls out Stargazer and introduces him to the audience, a guy who greatly helped Rak understand the movement of the stars. What's more, Rak has already confirmed that the knowledge he possesses isn't some hoax. That's exactly why he, the chieftain of this lizardman tribe, grants Stargazer the title of their trib's guide. From this point onward, it should be common knowledge that Stargazer will be their sole guide, the one responsible for leading everyone to their new home. Now, Rak wants Stargazer to announce to the masses where they will be heading next. The wise lizard raises his finger and points in a certain direction. When the post-dawn morning sun rises, they will begin their journey southward. The journey will last a full 10 days. Along the way, they will come across a rotten lake, and after walking 3 more days, they will traverse desolate mountains and valleys. If they follow the directions as Stargazer intends, he promises to lead them to an endless forest. That place is filled with wild beasts and inhabited by many different species. Long story short, that forest is the best place for their current population to thrive. With Stargazer done with his speech, Ray respectfully sends the wanderer away before taking control of everyone's attention again. Standing tall over the altar, he shouts to Yuri, asking him why it's necessary to avoid killing every buffalo they hunt. Even though Yuri is a big guy, he clearly has stage fright and stutters while speaking. He claims that by preserving their catch and keeping it alive, they can use it when they're truly starving. Rocker, of course, publicly praises Yuri for his positive thinking. The fact that he suppressed his urges and instead of eating the buffalo right away, thought of their future. To further endorse the idea, Rocker rewards Yuri with an iron weapon. Everyone is shocked to see a weapon made out of iron. And Rack doesn't stop with Yuri. He also rewards those who resisted their appetites and preserved their hunt for later use. Seeing those being rewarded, the other lizard men begin craving such weapons for themselves. Well, it looks like Rack's strategy is working. This simple gesture encourages others to preserve food for better use, rather than giving in to their taste buds and instincts. Right then, Rack grabs one of the buffalo skulls and lowers it over his face like a sacred war mask. He summons the warriors to step forward. Yuri answers the call first, and Rack grants him a skull of his own. Those who bear the skulls upon their heads are consecrated as the skeleton warriors, fighters sworn to stand at Rack's side and carve their god's will into the world. They cannot linger in this holy ground any longer. Their god demands movement, demands obedience. They must depart at once and seek the next sanctuary that awaits them. As the first cracks of dusk split the sky, Rack invokes the name of their god, the nameless beetle god, commanding every warrior to carve that name into their very souls. The road ahead will be merciless, the trials unending, but they must endure. Just as they endured, resisting the temptation of devouring the water buffaloes. Their suffering is their offering. Their resolve is their worship. With their iron spears raised high, everyone vows to march forth. Rack stands beneath the dusk of a new day, a new journey, a new beginning. He begs his god for forgiveness for speaking so boldly, for using his name to motivate the others, for using the pretense of godly will to unify everyone. The said god watches everything unfold, and he isn't even slightly worried about Rack's actions. In fact, he feels proud to have Rack as his high priest. After all, Ray is truly having a positive impact on the people he leads, not only boosting morale, but also accelerating their growth. Yuri is a prime example, having leveled up accordingly. Even Rack has advanced his special stats. The results the high priest has produced haven't disappointed Nebula even once. But the real game begins now. The true trials for Rack lie ahead. Under the scorching heat, the entire Lizardmen Legion trudges through the wilderness. The heat is so unbearable that Manon even collapses. Right then, Rack decides to take a short break. As they rest, it gives them time to reflect on their current situation. They begin doubting whether they'll even reach the place they're hoping for after surviving this grueling desert. Even Rayrak wants to know what's happening since they've already been walking for 3 days. The entire group is exhausted, and to make matters worse, they are running dangerously low on resources, and relying on yet another miracle from their god is the last thing Rock wants. Right then, Yuri comes running with alarming news. They've sighted another species in the distance. They're orcs, totally hyped up and ready to loot the lizardmen they've spotted. But once they approach the full legion, the few orcs are stunned, sweat dripping down their faces. Just as the skeleton warriors prepare to smash some heads, the cunning orcs drop their stone weapons and surrender immediately. Before engaging in dialogue, the lizardmen offer the green guys some food to feast on. The orcs first express their gratitude, then begin explaining their situation. The reason they're wandering the wilderness is because their home was invaded by a monster. They used to live in the hills. It wasn't paradise, but it had enough resources to survive. But ever since a particular monster took over, they had no choice but to flee. The mention of a monster piques Nebula's curiosity. So he promptly scouts the area, only to find a massive centipede guarding some kind of square structure resting on its back. Turns out this creature is known as an abomination, and there are many types of abominations. This specific one is called the Ancient Caloptera. The worst part, this creature has triple D in every attribute, adding an additional 600 points to each one. Here's a little more about these abominations. In the storyline of the game Perished World, there exist creatures said to have been created by the now dead ancient gods. After the gods disappeared, these creatures were left wandering the planet with no one to guide them. Now, these beings are notorious as abominations. Their unique trait: they possess venomous fangs. Long story short, this is not something Nebula should be messing with, especially considering the current strength of his civilization. As the creature twists and writhes, the entire ground shakes, causing distress among the lizard men. However, the green orc calmly assures them that the creature is currently asleep, just sleepwalking. While they still have time, Rak begins weighing his options. According to the Wanderer, if they turn back into the wilderness and follow the mountain range, it will add 8 extra days to their journey. Wasting 8 days of supplies just to take a detour makes Rak hesitate. But fighting that monstrosity head-on also seems impossible, especially when his people are terrified. Rak hangs in the air, trapped in a dilemma. Meanwhile, Zale notices the high cliffs and the massive boulders resting at the edge. You can already guess what she's thinking. That's exactly why she suggests they fight rather than taking the long route. When Zale says fight, she knows what she is saying. After all, her intellectual stats are way higher than your everyday lizard man out here. She's already figured out how to use the landscape to their advantage. But for her plan to succeed, they must find an effective way to push the boulders off the cliffs with minimal effort. She recalls how the blacksmith once used a contraption, a bellows, to push more oxygen into the brazier for stronger flames. Similarly, they must figure out a method to push those giant boulders efficiently. After thinking it through, they manage to figure out a lever mechanism to push the boulders off the cliff. With combined effort, they finally succeed in moving the boulders into position. Nebula praises his civilization for coming up with such a simple yet effective method to deal with a monstrosity like this centipede. Still, to secure victory, they must drop all the boulders at once. Eventually, they push the first one, and it rolls down the cliff with deadly speed. The centipede notices far too late. The first boulder finds its mark, smashing into the monster, but it barely does anything. They've only managed to chip its skull, and that just enrages the beast. The monster begins climbing upward, charging toward the lizard men to obliterate whoever threw the boulders. The other group of skeleton soldiers is told to drop their next boulder, but they're struggling. It's already too late. Nebula has no choice but to step in himself. He descends into Rock's body and pushes the boulder with his own strength. With the second boulder on its way, Zale urges them to drop the third, but there's no time to set up the lever again. So the Gigachad lizard rak goes all out on his own, pushing the massive stone with pure, raw muscle. With his muscles bulging and veins popping, he shoves it off the cliff. Still, Nebula knows that even this might not be enough. That's when Rockrat grabs his spear and leaps off the cliff. He hurls the spear downward like a goddamn meteor, striking the centipede in a critical spot. The monster screeches in agony, and in that moment the falling boulder joins the chat, smashing straight into its skull. Then the final boulder crashes onto its face, crushing it completely. Rak lands back on solid ground, watching the monster fall. Back on his throne, Nebula finally exhales in relief. The system announces the successful subjugation of an abomination. This achievement increases Nebula's faith. Along with that, the system also rewards him with something new: Abomination Essence, something Nebula had long desired. As you know, Nebula can create resources specific to his civilization by spending faith points. But to create something that doesn't exist in the world at all, he needs special materials. That's where Abomination Essence shines. With it, Nebula can craft sacred beasts. Sacred beasts exist solely to spread their god's will across the world. They also have room to grow their stats, and raising them to higher levels grants them new classes, such as Apostle or Incarnation. For now, Nebula is looking forward to seeing what kind of sacred beast he'll be able to create. Cutting back to the lizard men, they refuse to let the monster's corpse go to waste. They plan to use it for sustenance, but the smell is absolutely foul. Zale tries taking a bite and realizes it tastes like literal garbage. To salvage the taste, they decide to add other stuff to make it at least edible, even if not a 5-star cuisine. Zale suggests adding some flavorful flora and roasting it over a fire. That way, they won't have to deal with the creature's rotten odor. They follow her idea, and when Rakra takes a bite, he's shocked. It's actually not that bad anymore. Z explains the technique known as cooking. She added scented grass and roasted the meat over fire. Seeing how impressive this new technique is, Rak insists on learning the skill for himself. As they continue eating, Zale mentions how the orc chief has an heir. This sparks an idea. Rak should probably find a mate, too. Bro's brain crashes instantly. Z remains completely serious, pointing out that they're getting older. It's only natural they need the next generation. As Rak sinks into deep contemplation, Zale expresses her willingness to be his mate. Just as he's about to respond, something shiny behind her catches his eye. It's some kind of ancient artifact. It was previously attached to the structure on the monster's back. Yuri, the goofball, tries to eat it, only to immediately realize it's not edible. The Wanderer reveals that this stuff is metal. Specifically, it's called gold. Zale also claims to have seen a similar metal before. The blacksmith had shown her various metals. If they polish it well, it reflects light and shines beautifully. Furthermore, it doesn't change color, nor does it decay over time. Among humans, this metal holds a lot of value. But for someone like Yuri, this piece of metal just sounds like a burden, heavy to carry and inedible. Speaking of which, the Wanderer suggests Yuri go hunt the deer that live around here. They're hoofed beasts with horns, and their meat is sweet and delicious. From what the orcs told them, there's supposed to be a herd of them somewhere nearby. Yuri perks up and heads out, while Rocker is still lost in his thoughts regarding this metal. Dusk descends a while later, and instead of indulging in the hunted deer resting in front of him, Rocker is still lost in thought. If gold supposedly doesn't decay, then what purpose did the creators of the tablet have in making something time couldn't wear down? This only makes him more curious about what the tablet is supposed to convey. Zoe returns with news that the entire lounge is ready to rest for the night. Rock is surprised that she found him even though he told no one about his whereabouts. Well, she spotted him because of the furred clothes he's wearing. Turns out it was her who suggested he wear them. Perfect for someone meant to play the role of chieftain. Night descends and the hunted deer in front of Rak begins to decompose. Yet he's still sitting there trying to figure out the purpose of this tablet. Suddenly, he notices the fireflies leaving trails of light, trying to form symbols. At first, Rak is astonished to see such bizarre illusions.
But whether their illusions are real doesn't matter. What matters is that the fireflies' movements resemble the markings on the tablet. It seems Rak has finally reached the epiphany he'd been searching for. This tablet was meant to represent something timeless, something that could never decay or be erased by time. And he has finally figured out what that thing is. He works all night deciphering the markings, and the dawn begins to break. He goes straight to Zale and wakes her up, wanting to show her what he has discovered. Let me spoil it for you. Bro has learned the concept of written language. He draws a symbol with a twig representing a male lizard man. Then he draws another symbol beside it to represent a female lizard man. After that, he draws an equal sign between the two symbols. Together, the symbols show that the male and female are companions to one another. And get this, Rak didn't draw this out of nowhere. He's actually using the symbols to tell her that he accepts her proposal and considers her his companion and mate. By now, Zale has learned enough of the language too. She draws a circle around the symbols and hopes Rak understands what that means. Well, it seems the chieftain knows exactly what it entails, and so do we. This is how Nebula's civilization discovered the concept of written language. It's honestly an achievement to be proud of, though it's going to take at least a few generations for it to evolve into a modern language. Anyway, now that Rock has chosen his mate, it's time for the wedding ceremony. For that, both the male and female must go out and hunt the biggest animal they can find and present it to their partner. And it looks like Zale has already outdone Rak with her catch. Anyway, Nebula is just relieved that he can now expect succession. We then cut back to the creature's corpse, which had already been dissected thoroughly. Currently, Rak is having a dialogue with the orc chief. The orc guy literally wells up in tears when Rak gives him the good news that the lizard men won't be occupying the place, meaning all the green guys can continue living as they were. The green guy sincerely thanks Rak. Not only did he kill that creature, but he was also benevolent enough to spare them their land. The overly grateful orc chief then introduces his son and assigns him as their guide since he knows the area like the back of his hand. According to the orcs, the land ahead has numerous large beasts and far bigger tribes living much closer to each other. Still, they're confident that a leader like Rak will easily overcome any obstacle in his path. As Rockarak and his crew scout this deep forest, they spot unusual footprints in the area. Once the Wanderer takes a closer look, he recognizes them as footprints of frogmen, creatures capable of walking on two legs. There are frogmen with good intentions, but not often. The fact that these creatures had been scouting this area only proves they have some hands-on experience of warfare reconnaissance. Judging by the total number of footprints, at least 5 frogmen scouted the place, meaning their tribe might have far greater numbers compared to the lizard men. After scouting, they return to their camp, and it's already nighttime. Most of the lizard men are ordered to scout different areas. This is the only way to create the illusion that they have superior numbers compared to what they actually have. Z also suggests increasing the number of lizard men on patrol and watchkeeping. A few days pass, and it seems their strategy worked. They didn't encounter any frogmen during their stay. Within those few days, Rack's tribe worked hard on their sustainability. They put emphasis on livestock farming, and the structural integrity of the houses they were building also improved exceptionally. Out of all these little achievements, the one that impressed Nebula the most was the speed at which the lizard men adapted to the concept of characters. Using the primitive maps they created and the new combination of characters paired with their existing hunting signs, the tribe quickly adopted the concept of written symbols. In addition to that, Rakra also made sure his tribe members recorded their harvests on a daily basis. This public record created a sense of competitiveness among the lizard men who wanted to outperform their peers. As for Nebula, his swarm of locusts is steadily growing in the center of the continent, and the insects from the nest to the south are also increasing in number. Thanks to that, his small dominion over insects has reached level 4. Just for context, Nebula previously had 3 swarms of insects, and he uses them to manipulate various environmental factors. Nebula feels very proud of the progress he's made so far. Under normal circumstances, no player would even dare push this much progress in such a short amount of time. It's all thanks to the terrain advantage Nebula had. The place he started from was an isolated region in the east, so he didn't encounter other players or major species during his early struggles. However, this is only the tip of the iceberg. There's far more ahead with dangers no one could even comprehend right now. Cutting back to Rakra, Yuri suddenly rushes in with concerning news that requires immediate attention. The frogmen are here. A while later, we finally meet the frogs for the dialogue. From our side, our upper echelon is also present to entertain these uninvited guests. Immediately, the first thing that catches Rakra's attention is the presence of a lizard man standing among the frogmen, something that makes no sense to him. Anyway, the top brass of the frogman introduces himself as Shunan, son of the great chief Oloi. First of all, he makes his intentions clear. They have no desire to engage in combat. Rock is surprised by the display of manners coming from Shunan. Respectfully, he introduces himself as well. Rocker, the chief of his tribe. The feeling is mutual. He also wishes not to point his weapon at anyone. With formalities out of the way, the frogman steps forward and reveals the purpose of their meeting. Turns out he is here to inform the lizard men that they have invaded frogman territory. Of course, Rack argues against it. How could all this land belong solely to the frogman tribe? Not to mention, there are no boundary markings anywhere that indicate frogman territory. That said, Rakra expresses no intention of invading another tribe's sovereignty, and he apologizes for it. However, he politely lets the Shunan know that they will be staying here for a while since they have nowhere else to go. Rack further takes control of the situation by flattering the son of Chief Alloy. Just a few kind words and Shunan willingly gives in to Rakra's stance. Then there are the 2 big guys standing behind Shunan quietly and without expression. This means they are only here to ensure that Shunan isn't doing something stupid. But as for that lizard man standing with the frogman, Rack still can't figure out his role. He's sure he'll learn soon enough. To do that, he sincerely invites the esteemed son of Chief Alloy to a feast. After all, 2 tribes just came to good terms without conflict, which is more than enough reason to hold a celebratory gathering. Shunan is about to accept the invitation, but quickly fumbles over his words when the big guy behind him whispers in his ear. He politely declines, reasoning that they have yet to build a relationship based on trust. Rack keeps insisting, claiming that sending a benefactor away without responding with kindness goes against the lizard men's code of conduct. At the very least, he wants Shunan to share a meal right here if he's uncomfortable entering the village. When the big guy behind Shunan gives an approving nod, the chief's son agrees. This is how Rack ends up sharing some sizzling meat with the chief's son. This is a perfect opportunity for him to learn about the relationship between the frogmen and the lizard man who accompanied them. However, Rock rins himself from asking such crucial details directly, as it may reveal how curious he is. So he decides to steer the conversation slowly. First, he asks a random question. What do the feathers around Shonen's neck symbolize? Turns out they're feathers of a cockatrice. Of course, Rak has no idea what kind of creature that is. Shonen doesn't realize he's being played and starts rattling off details. These birds are dangerous creatures living in the nearby forests. Appearance-wise, they walk on two legs and are massive in size. Aside from their sheer size, what makes them dangerous is that they are poisonous. They have quick reflexes, too. That's why the Frogman tribe often sends scouts all the way here to make sure no cockatrice is near enough to pose a threat. Since these birds sound like a massive pain to hunt, Rak wants to know what kind of weapon the Frogmen actually use. Perhaps javelins. But to Shunin, javelins are inferior and useless. He calls out to his pale white lizard man companion and orders him to fetch a bow and arrows, a type of weapon Rak has never even heard of before. A while later, the pale white lizard man brings the weapon Shunan requested. Next, he's tasked with setting up a wooden plank against a tree as a target. Once that's done, Shunan releases his first arrow, and it lands perfectly on the mark. Rock praises both the weapon and its user for such impressive accuracy. Shun claims he doesn't want to brag, but he claims to be one of the best archers in his tribe. They've been learning to wield this weapon since childhood. Damn, this green guy is literally starving for validation. He gets flattered every time Rak praises him. Up next, when our chief expresses his desire to try the weapon, the frogmen hand it over happily. Rak fiddles around with it for a while, trying to figure out the proper way to hold and use it. While doing so, he can clearly tell this weapon is far superior compared to javelins. It's easy to carry a lot of arrows, and both its speed and accuracy are insane. Rak attempts several shots, but none of them manage to reach the target. Shunin then orders his lizard man companion, whose name is Owen, by the way, to fetch the arrows. As Owen dashes forward to collect them, Ray insists on picking them up himself since he was the one who fired them. Of course, that's just a pretense to get closer to Owen away from earshot. As Ray crouches down near Owen, the first thing he notices is how shaken this guy looks. When the chieftain questions this young lizard man on why he's hanging around with Frogman, Owen responds hesitantly. He claims that both the Lizard Man and Frogman tribes actually live together. And why they're together? Well, according to him, both tribes benefit from the arrangement. Of course, that sounds completely unbelievable to Rak, but Owen doubles down, happily insisting that both tribes live in harmony. Naturally, Rak is curious how this symbiotic relationship even works. According to Owen, the Frogmen provide protection while the Lizard Men take care of menial tasks. Furthermore, frogmen can dive deep and explore underwater areas, while lizard men are better at picking fruits and climbing trees. They basically exchange resources that the other tribe can't obtain themselves, making life easier for both groups. However, Rak believes lizard men don't need anyone's protection since they're fully capable of defending themselves. But Owen reminds the chieftain about how dangerous this forest truly is. Only Aloy's tribe, supposedly the largest tribe in the forest, can handle it. The situation for the lizard men was so miserable that even basic survival wasn't guaranteed without the frogman's help. For now, Rak decides to stop questioning him, since he has already obtained the answers he wanted. He sternly orders Owen to act as if this conversation never happened. A while later, the lizard men prepare some steamed deer ribs for their esteemed guest, Shunan. The moment he takes the first bite, his face lights up like a kid in a candy store. He's had deer before, but never one seasoned with herbs. The guy is completely sold. And to hammer the nail deeper, Rak further tempts him with the mention of buffalo meat. Naturally, Shunan perks up again. After all, it's not every day they get to eat buffalo. It's been ages since he last had it, and even then it was a stale piece he had. But now he can have tender, fresh buffalo meat if he joins Rak in the camp since they have one there. But then his big, muscular buddy starts throwing deadly glares, leaving poor Shunan no choice but to decline under that harsh pressure. Rak, being just as sassy, tries to rub Shunan's FOMO even harder. Shunan insists he will visit the camp, but only after they've built more trust in their relationship. Luckily, Aloy's tribe members aren't hostile toward lizard men, and Owen and the other lizard men living with frogmen are living proof of that. Shunan calls Owen over and asks him to explain to Rak how their tribes have been helping each other ever since they started living together. Of course, Owen begins narrating the script he's clearly been taught by his masters, and Ray sees through all of it. He can tell every word coming out of Owen's mouth is rehearsed, prepared for this exact moment. With dusk starting to cast its yellow hue, Shunan decides to be on his way. He definitely enjoyed the company, and is genuinely grateful. When Rock insists he visit their village next time, Shunan politely declines as expected. The representatives of both tribes wave at each other before parting ways. It's then we notice Shunan getting extremely harsh with Owen.
a detail Rack's eyes don't miss. He can tell these lizard men aren't on good terms with the frogmen at all. Once Shunan gets back to his village, he and his men start beating the out of Owen. Turns out Shunan realized Owen had spoken to the lizardmen chief earlier and demands he spill everything he talked about. The poor lizard man fumbles over his words as he tries to lie, claiming he only guided the chieftain on how to become a better bowman. Well, that pathetic excuse just earns him more beating because he can't even shoot an arrow himself. So how the hell was he tutoring that chieftain? But Owen doubles down, insisting that if he had told the truth to the chieftain, that guy would have become suspicious. That's why Owen demanded some sort of payment if the chief wanted shooting lessons. In response, the chieftain said he didn't possess anything valuable to pay with. Eventually, Shunan buys the story and even starts holding Owen in high regard for such impressive bargaining skills. Since Owen did such an excellent job, Shunan promises to spare his offspring who was scheduled for sacrifice today. You see, these bastards have a bunch of lizard men captive, all intended to be sacrificed. That's exactly why Owen is willing to obey every command Shunan gives. He's prepared to fool Rack and his tribe with everything he's got. Later that night, Owen sits at the edge of the pond, reflecting on the terrible decisions that led him here. He regrets not seeing the true colors of these frogmen earlier. They lured them in while pretending to be benevolent. By now, the major chunk of lizard men who lived here have already been sacrificed. The remaining 200 or so don't dare revolt against 1,500 frogmen. Not only do the frogmen have superior numbers, they also have a supposedly divine creature they call a god, a terrifying two-headed fiend that can devour anything with a single swipe. That being is the only thing ruling over the frogmen, and by extension, it's ruling over the lizard men. Owen is certain that the black-scaled lizard man chieftain he met is indeed a powerful individual, but even then, his tribe has only about 600 members and can't wield any weapons, so Owen plans to lure them here and have them sacrificed first. That way, his own people get a little more time to live. He'll do anything to prolong his son's life, even if it means luring the other tribe into this trap. The next day arrives, and Yuri is out here flexing this water buffalo, making Shunan go absolutely bananas. Rack doesn't waste the moment to brag about it either. Now that Shunan has seen the buffalo with his own eyes, Rockrank wants to trade it for the weapon called a bow. That's when Owen steps in, insisting they should visit each other's villages before any major trade happens. It's only fair they get acquainted first. In fact, Owen promises to gift the bow afterward as a gesture of goodwill. Many days pass like this. Rack and Zale are testing the bow they replicated themselves, but for some reason their prototype isn't able to fire the arrow far. Rack is convinced it's the bowstring, but they still haven't figured out which creature's tendons should be used for it. We then learn that the next meeting with the frogmen will be the 5th one, and it's right around the corner. Those guys are extremely eager to learn more about their tribe. Although their curiosity feels suspicious to Ray, he's certain they're hiding something vicious under the pretext of friendship. The problem is he can't quite put his finger on what they're plotting. I guess it's finally time to put Owen to use. This will also help Owen prove his worth and loyalty. We cut back to the frogman. They're busy choking that poor guy again. They're frustrated that they've made no progress getting closer to the tribe, even though they followed Owen's guidance. Owen admits the black-skilled chieftain is far more cunning and cautious than he expected. But whatever the case, Shunan wants Owen to speed things up. Chief Alloy has given them a deadline to bring the sacrifices, and they can't afford to miss it. Owen insists on knowing why the deadline is so strict. In his mind, he's certain these guys are hiding something crucial, something he needs to know. So he questions Shunan about it. Shunan explains that his father and the elders are getting sicker, so delaying the sacrificial ritual isn't an option. A disease is spreading that causes extreme itchiness, and the symptoms only get worse. While Shunan admits no lizard man should know about this, he considers Owen an exception. He stresses how dangerous the disease is. If any frog man is afflicted, their skin not only itches, but becomes coated with a sticky white layer of mucus. This layer is impossible to rub off, and it constantly expands. At a certain point, the mucus makes it impossible to breathe properly, eventually suffocating the victim. As of now, a priest has already died from it. Owen is utterly surprised that Shunan bothered to spill such classified details to a lizard man. The only explanation he can think of is that Shunan is putting him through some sort of test, so he masks his emotions and promises never to spread this information among the lizard men. After all, if they learn something this crucial, they'll realize the frogmen are actually quite weak, and that would spark a revolt. Still, it's not like they can keep this secret hidden forever. So, as a precautionary measure, Owen suggests spreading rumors that the illness is also contagious to lizard men.
To make the story believable, he adds that grasses and other plants exist that produce a white foam when crushed, something they can use to imitate the mucus. Owen volunteers to act as the first infected patient. With that settled, Shunan is once again proud of the impressive strategic plans Owen always comes up with, though he also wants him to use that same cleverness to lure all those black lizard men here. Only then will he exclude Owen's son from the sacrifice. Of course, the cornered lizard man is more than grateful for such benevolence. As Shunan starts leaving after laying down all the details, Owen stops him and requests a batch of bows to use against the black-scaled lizard men. But it's clear Shunan isn't willing to hand over his precious weapons so easily. The next day arrives, and the frogmen have brought quite a lot of stuff for the lizard men as gifts. It looks like Rak has brought a massive stack of herbs that help with itching. He's hoping this huge stockpile will be enough to exchange for at least one bow. As expected, Shunan declines the offer. To him, more than anything, trust is what matters when it comes to trading weapons. For obvious reasons, Rak has grown tired of hearing this broken tape loop the same excuse over and over. Finally, he agrees to improve the mutual trust between both tribes, just like the great son of Alloy desires. But first, he intends to have a private chat with Owen. Eventually, Owen and the chieftain walk out of everyone's earshot. Owen begins narrating the same old scripted. He recalls how the other gray and brown scaled lizard men had a brotherly ritual with the frogmen tribe before their tribes merged. The ritual basically requires spending time rigorously studying each other. That's why it's imperative for Rakra to tell everything about his tribe. Only then will Owen share all the information about the frogman. It's about time they stop being so wary and actually make an effort to get closer. Right then, the familiar blue butterflies join the scene, one even landing on Owen. Rock immediately picks up on what his god is trying to tell him. He wholeheartedly agrees with Owen. It is indeed time to stop being so wary of each other. Rock is willing to tell Owen everything he wants to know. A while later, Shunan and his crew return to their village. This time, Shunan is absolutely ecstatic to realize they've managed to gather a ton of information about those black-skilled lizard men. What excites him most is that they finally convinced those fools to visit their village. Even better, those supposed fools voluntarily showed Shunan around their own village. Now the frogmen know exactly where the lizard man village is located and how many numbers they possess. Shunan doesn't hesitate before giving all the credit to Owen, who helped them gain the upper hand over the tribe. Owen is flattered to hear it, though he hesitantly reminds Shunan of the promise he made. Of course, that cunning toad remembers the promise all too well, though I highly doubt he plans on honoring it. Dust creeps in, and as usual, Owen sits near the pond, excited at the thought of living with his child again like they used to. As for Rakra in his village, Owen believes the chieftain's own ignorance is what will eventually lead to his downfall. To learn exactly what conversation they had, we cut a little back in time. Rock is trying to familiarize Owen with the concept of characters and symbols. He draws certain symbols with a twig and explains their meanings. The cross means decline, and the other character represents lie. Owen, being sharp-minded, quickly picks up on it. Not only that, he also puts both characters together, forming an entirely new sentence. For example, putting the character for lie next to the cross forms the phrase no lie, which represents truth. Rakra is thoroughly impressed by how quickly he learned it. Even he never thought of using these characters this way. All these flattering words remind Owen of Shunan, who also praises him for his sharp mind. Still, Owen is curious why Rakara is specifically teaching him symbols when they never mention such things in the meetings with the frogmen. It's as if Rakra is reading his mind. He explains that the only reason he's teaching this is because he wants to build trust. He doesn't want to build trust with the frogmen, but with Owen himself. Rak already knows the things he's been told about the frogmen aren't true, and there are many stories Owen simply isn't allowed to share. Rak and his people have seen pain. That's exactly why they've learned to recognize it in others. He can easily differentiate predator from prey, and he's already recognized that Owen and his people are the prey. Rak can see and smell the pain carved across Owen's face. Despite that, the young lizard man keeps denying everything, but the chieftain knows all too well. Returning from the flashback, Owen reflects on his situation. He knows the chieftain of the black-scaled tribe is confident and strong, but he doesn't stand a chance against frogmen weapons. Rak's claim about taking down an abominable creature sounds ridiculous to Owen, especially when they don't even have special weapons. Furthermore, Chief Rock must be incredibly foolish to give him knowledge of their symbols. Owen feels he isn't worthy of the chieftain's trust. He considers himself nothing more than a bargainer, someone only concerned about his own gains. The next day arrives, and Rak finally pays a visit to the Frogman's village. Seeing them, Shunan welcomes his new friends with open arms. Once the pleasantries are done, Ray apologizes for arriving fully equipped. He feared they might encounter a cockatrice along the way, and didn't want to risk it. Of course, Shunan has no objections. In his mind, he thinks these lizard men are stupid for believing their primitive spears could ever stand a chance against a cockatrice. Besides, Shunan doesn't intend to fight the lizard men at all. He plans to poison the food during their feast. Rak then starts glancing around looking for Owen. Shunan explains he's busy preparing for the banquet. They eventually spot him arranging seats for their guests. Shunan notices him scribbling something on the ground with a twig. He doesn't suspect a thing and thinks Owen is probably marking where each guest is supposed to sit. He gestures for Rak to go greet Owen himself. As for Shunan, he's going to check on the food preparations. Once Rak approaches, Owen points to the markings he's been carving, pretending they indicate where the lizard men are supposed to sit, but the symbol he's drawn is the one that means lie. Rak immediately understands what they are supposed to do. He signals to Yuri to get things started. And just like that, the real banquet begins. Yuri plants his feet, takes his stance, and chucks the spear with all his strength, killing one armed frogman instantly. Rak then orders his warriors to obliterate the frogman, initiating this one-sided massacre. A while passes, and Rak's crew clears the whole area without sustaining a single casualty. Most frogmen have already fled, including Shunan. Next, they must prepare to fight the bowmen. For that, Rak can only hope their backup plan works. He quickly turns to Owen and gives him a crucial task, one he cannot fail. Cutting to the frogman, Shunan is grinding his teeth in fury if he has any. He's certain this is all Owen's doing. He orders his henchmen to gather every warrior in the village. They must attack the lizard men immediately. As for the gray captive lizard men, their job is to hold off Rak's group until the frogmen warriors are ready. Soon the frogmen unleash a barrage of arrows aimed directly at the lizard men. But Rak had already planned for this. Their backup plan was shields. All the lizard men raise their shields, blocking the incoming arrows. Those weak sticks bounce right off as soon as they hit. Yuri is ecstatic seeing these things actually work against arrows. Meanwhile, Shunan quickly adjusts the strategy. He orders the frogman to fire only when the lizard men advance, but that plan also collapses as a thick blanket of smoke begins swallowing the entire area, ruining everyone's visibility. No one can aim properly anymore. And the one spreading the smoke, well, it's Owen who has set the frogman's abodus on fire. His fellow lizard men stare in disbelief, watching him commit such a bold act. For a moment, they think it must be on Shunan's orders. But Owen reveals the truth. He's acting under orders from the black-skilled chieftain. He begs his friends to trust him, just this once, assuring them that Rak will crush the frogman. Eventually, his comrades pick up their own torches and start burning everything around them. By the time Shunan realizes the settlement is on fire, it's already too late. For now, he decides they must retreat, especially since the lizard men under their command have already betrayed them. They plan to rejoin the battle later when their trump card, warrior Oboy, arrives, but Shunan still doubts whether they can turn the tide. He doesn't doubt Oboy's strength. He's worried they might need more than just a strong warrior. He then considers taking aid from the fiend living in the waters. Meanwhile, Warrior Oboy receives word that Shunan is retreating to the lower village. The 10 warriors stationed at the banquet hall and the 5 warriors sent to investigate have all been massacred. Oboy counts the 5 warriors on the island and the 10 beside him. Counting everyone, they have 45 warriors in total. That number gives him confidence. They still have the advantage. One frogman takes out a spear, laces it in poisonous frog mucus, and prepares to shoot. But suddenly the ground trembles. A cold tension grips Warrior. Oh boy. The feeling in his chest is the same one he had the day he faced the cockatrice. He can tell something catastrophic is coming. Eventually, they unleash their barrage of arrows, but their attack is rendered useless against Drake Manon. His massive presence alone makes the frogman shudder in fear. The one riding the beast is Zale. She notices how big Manon has grown since the last time she rode him. What's even more comical is the fact that the arrows, supposedly the enemy's ultimate weapons, are literally serving as side snacks for Manon. You see, Manon eats anything that comes close to his mouth. He roars viciously, ready to devour even more food, and these frogmen are about to become his buffet. Oh boy finds himself in a serious pickle since their ultimate weapon has completely failed them.
Even if he tries shooting at Manoon's vulnerable parts, the creature is simply too fast for him to take proper aim. Eventually, Manoon lunges forward and crushes one of the frogmen with the sheer strength of his jaws. At this point, Oh Boy is certain this monster isn't something they can mess with. Since nothing is going to work against this all-round predator, Oh Boy decides to use the creature's own strength against it. He tosses the poisonous toad right at Manon, and just as expected, Manon devours it instantly. The other frogmen also begin throwing their poisonous toads toward him, and Manon is literally catching every single one with his mouth left and right, making sure no delightful dessert goes to waste. Meanwhile, Zale finds it strange that the enemy is throwing literal snacks at Manhwa. Under Nebula's blessings, specifically one of the 3 blessings, they have resistance against toxins. Once again, Oh Boy realizes far too late that they've royally screwed up. Manon pleasantly smiles at his next snack before yanking Oh Boy's head off his body. We then cut back to the place that had been set ablaze. One of the frogmen tries to snipe Rack with a poisonous arrow, but the Chad lizard simply tears through the incoming arrow with a strike of his tail. Yuri then smashes the sniper's head, causing the brain bits to splatter. With the last warrior taken care of, no enemies remain. Shunin has already abandoned the village and has gone to the inner village located in the island in the middle of the river. Since the frogman has been crushed mercilessly, the grayish-brown lizard men have also begun attacking the frogmen. Seeing all the destruction and the overwhelming damage the frogmen have taken, Rack starts wondering why their leader Alloy hasn't shown up yet. Well, turns out Nebula has already taken care of Alloy Offcreen. There's a virus with a ridiculously long name that I can't even pronounce. The only thing that matters is that the illness caused by this virus is extremely fatal. By the time Rakara decided to leave the Holy Land, Nebula had located a disease hundreds of kilometers away. Using insects, he transported that disease all the way here. Once the great frogman leader Alloy became infected, he was no longer the powerful figure he was revered to be. The idiot, on the brink of death, held countless ceremonies where he sacrificed poor lizardmen children, offering them to that 2-headed fiend. He believed this was the only way his illness could be cured. Cutting back to Rack and his crew, they've successfully wiped out the frogmen in the area. That's when Owen comes running to him. He desperately begs Rack to cross the lake immediately and reach the island in the middle. There are young lizardmen about to be sacrificed to that 2-headed fiend. But as grim as this sounds, Rakra points out that Owen is telling him all this way too late. They can't cross the lake now because the frogmen have already sailed off toward the island with their boats. Trying to reach it by swimming would be pure suicide. In the water, they'd be nothing but practice dummies for frogman archers. Owen sinks into utter despair. With clasped hands and eyes full of sorrow and desperation, he begs Rack to do something. His son is captured there. Hearing the mention of his son, Rocker goes absolutely ballistic and smacks Owen across the face. He yells at this brain-dead-ad fool for not telling him earlier. He's utterly disappointed that Owen never trusted him to begin with. If they had known from the start, Rocker is certain he would have already been prepared to take down that so-called god. Now, thanks to Owen, his son is likely headed toward an unnecessary demise. Even Owen begins regretting his decisions now. And just as everything seems too late, the 2-headed fiend finally responds to the frogman's ceremony. The fiend arrives to claim the offerings. The frogmen chant their god's name with full devotion, begging him to accept their sacrifices. Alloy further pleads for his god to destroy the black-scaled lizardmen threatening the lake. Meanwhile, Owen sits at the edge of the lake, helpless, able to do nothing but watch. As for Rack and Zale, they're busy sizing up the abomination. First thing to note is that the creature is slightly bigger than the Kalopra they defeated with boulders. There's a chance they can defeat it, but the odds are severely against them, especially since the terrain now puts them at a huge disadvantage. Casualties would be inevitable. Right then, Rock receives a signal from his god, and from this point onward, everything changes. Rack orders Owen to look ahead. Look ahead and tell him if he doesn't believe in miracles. Standing before them is a massive praying mantis, a literal miracle of God. Cutting back to the idiotic frog leader worshipping this 2-headed freak, he continues begging the fiend to take these lizard men as sacrifice. But it's clear the fiend's attention has been stolen by something else. When Aloy looks around to see what caught the fiend's eye, he sees the massive mantis. The only word that forms in the terrified frogman's minds after witnessing the mantis is God. This creature is a literal god. Nebula created this being using the essence of an abomination. Other factors like his Dominion level 4, Divinity level, and the amount of faith he has also played major roles. Without these, he wouldn't have been granted the ability to create a sacred beast. Nebula is sure not many players possess a sacred creature already. Meanwhile, the two-headed fiend lunges at the mantis to take a bite, but the mantis grabs the bastard's jaw with a bare hand. The monster thrashes and struggles to escape the mantis's grip. As he's being shoved around, several frogmen are crushed under the fiend's massive body. The second head lunges, but the mantis shows no mercy and slices it clean off, spraying blood everywhere. The creature once worshipped as god has now been taught a brutal lesson. He's nothing more than a disgusting rat. The mantis then decides to offer this lowly creature to its almighty creator. With a single jolt, the mantis tears the head off the monster's body, finally freeing this ignorant beast from its pathetic existence. With the two-headed fiend dead, the mantis stands tall, reveling in victory. The lizard men erupt in celebration, while Owen can barely hold back his tears. Got to admit, the mantis's entrance was pure hype. Even Nebula thinks so. Despite the fiend's impressive stats, it never even got the chance to use its small dominion. And as we know, the defeat of the two-headed fiend rewards Nebula with its essence. A new notification allows him to claim the small dominion, though it's unknown at first. Only after claiming it does Nebula learn the dominion is seawater. Now it makes sense why the monster didn't use it. There's only fresh and sweet water here, so the seawater dominion would have been useless. Honestly, dominion over rivers would have been way better since even Nebula can't utilize seawater here. Still, he's sure it'll come in handy someday. We then transition back to Chief Alloy, who is in utter disbelief seeing their god fall with such ease. Seeing his father in such dismay, his son Shunan finally begins to understand the real reason behind the frogman's downfall. As far as he can tell, his father and his tribe didn't lose their strength because of the disease. It's because they were too devoted and reliant on that two-headed fiend. The entire tribe let their guard down. They stopped training, believing that the two-headed god would keep them safe forever. Now the frogmen are nothing more than cowards, powerless to stand against their enemies. The great mantis delivers the good news to his creator about the abomination's annihilation. Nebula feels proud of his creation and grants him the chance to rest until he is summoned again. The great mantis is prepared to emerge whenever the time comes, and his involvement becomes imperative. Meanwhile, Rocker and his crew notice the frogmen crossing the river to reach the outer village. The village has been abandoned, giving Rockrak the opportunity to swim across and rescue those lizard men. With his voice raised high and a tone dripping with dominance, Rock addresses the captives of the village. Today he is here to claim victory over the frogmen. If there is anyone with the courage to join him in this endeavor, they can step forward. Owen immediately volunteers, ready to help him secure this victory. The other injured lizard men also gather their courage and insist on joining as well, finally acknowledging Rak as their chieftain. But Rak insists that the injured stay behind and rest. One brave lizard man proclaims himself a former warrior who knows exactly when to rest while facing danger. Although none of them feel any honor in exterminating Frogman civilians, their hearts have been reignited with a fire to fight for themselves and reclaim their freedom. What sparked this fire is Rak and his people's resolve, their refusal to fear frogmen warriors. Rak can tell the real fuel behind their energy is pure hatred and anger toward the frogmen. The former warrior admits it without hesitation. It's finally time to let this burning hatred out, just so the fire in their hearts can be extinguished. They have lost their companions, their children, their grandchildren. Unless they return these wrongdoings back to the frogmen, they will never find peace. And honestly, that's exactly what Rak wants them to do. He once again raises his voice, letting it crack through the air as he charges everyone with determination. Determination to seek vengeance against those who inflicted sorrow. Before we move further in the story, we cut a little back into the past. It's around the time when Shunan helped Rak use a bow. Given how fast Rak was learning, Shunan was sure he'd soon be on par with frogman warriors. Currently, Rak's biggest drawback is that he takes way too long to shoot an arrow. To that, Rak argued that hitting crucial points of the target is better than hitting non-crucial parts. That's when Shunan explains that real targets in real battles are always moving. So, it's essential to shoot as quickly as possible without missing. Folks, keep that little detail in mind. It's going to come in handy soon in the story. After sharing a bit more knowledge about the weapon, Shunan also promised to teach Rak how to make a bow himself, but only when their bond becomes stronger. He assured him that the materials needed for the bows are easily accessible to lizard men as well. Back then,
Rak felt a strange, ominous feeling when Shunan mentioned the materials being easily accessible. It was a morbid feeling, one he will eventually understand directly from Shunan's own mouth. I have a strong hunch why Rakra felt that ghastly chill, but I won't spoil the thrill. Right now he's swimming toward the island with the other warriors. Once they reach the shore, the gray-scaled lizard men pounce toward their loved ones. Owen hugs his son Ian as tightly and passionately as he can. Rak then tasks Yuri with helping the kids evacuate the area. He orders the gray and brown scaled lizard men to move to the back of the outer village and confuse the frogmen. From what Yuri can interpret, they are about to launch an attack and pinch the enemy from two sides. Rak confirms this much. Once the enemy's attention is fully drawn to the front of the village, he plans to cross the lake and strike from there. Although Yuri feels concerned for his chieftain, Rak reassures him that he'll be fine, especially since the enemy no longer has the numbers they once did. Not to mention, the lizard men have just received yet another blessing from their god. Their black scales now shimmer like rippling waves sparkling under the moonlight. Cutting to the frogman village. Everyone is running around in panic, trying to evacuate because the enemy has arrived. Right at that moment, Rak and his crew crash the party from the opposite side of the village. Yuri and his fellows were already wreaking havoc, and Rak joins them without missing a beat. The great chieftain of the frogmen begs desperately for the two-headed fiend to manifest and rescue him from this catastrophe. After all the sacrifices he made for that two-headed god, this is the least he deserves. Rak shuts the bastard's yap with a single spear piercing through his head, killing him instantly. The one-sided massacre continues, swallowing up every last frogman. Right now, the lizard men can be heard shouting and looking for Shunan. The man in question is hiding inside a shack. He's in utter shock. How could the frogman lose despite having superior numbers and advanced weapons? He is eventually found by Rockrak, who creeps up right behind him. Realizing someone's behind him, Shunan is stunned in fear and falls to the floor. Rayrak commands him to get on his feet and grab his weapon. He's willing to give Shunan a chance to protect his honor as a warrior and die fighting like one. But Shunan is a coward. To him, honor means nothing in the face of death. He immediately starts begging to be spared for the sake of the time they had spent together. He even offers to reveal the secret behind the materials used to craft their bows. In fact, he is more than willing to expose the living beings they used to extract the tendons for the bowstrings. With a trembling voice, he confesses that those tendons came from lizard men. Shunan realizes too late that he has only worsened his situation by revealing such morbid information. Rak acknowledges Shunan's confession, and surprisingly he accepts the deal and decides to let Shunan walk away alive. After all, Rak holds no personal grudge against him. With that, he sternly orders Shunan to run. The frogman takes the cue and bolts toward the forest. But the only reason Rak let him go is because he wanted a moving target to test his aim. The next day arrives and we find a frogman's corpse tied to a tree, acting as the perfect target dummy for the lizardmen chief. Rak is testing the new bows they crafted, each fitted with the custom bowstrings they managed to create themselves. The only problem they currently face is the limited resilience of the strings. If they pull just a little too hard, they snap. Owen admits there simply aren't any stronger materials than what they are using right now. Rak knows this well, and that's exactly why he isn't planning to stay here forever. Winter is coming, and to feed the buffaloes they're raising, they must relocate to a much warmer place. Since Owen is wearing his warrior mask, Rak assumes he must have gone hunting today as well. Owen confirms it, proudly stating that he exterminated all the remaining frogmen in the area. For now, they won't have to worry about having enough material for bowstrings, at least for a while. We then get a glimpse of the past when Shunan got struck in the foot, causing him to stumble. The gray lizard men were hyped to kill this bastard right then and there. And the one who took this responsibility was Owen, determined to kill that filthy toad with his own hands. Alloy, the chief of the Frogman tribe, met the same end as his son. By now, his bones are likely adorning someone else's head, just like Shunan's bones now decorate Owen's. Just as Owen is about to explain a crucial detail, Zale arrives and spots a kid trying to sneak behind a tree. She purposely startles the kid and asks if he's here to talk to the chief. That's when Zale notices a small wooden statue the kid drops. When the statue is shown to Rock, he immediately recognizes it as their guardian. They're actually surprised that such a young kid crafted something so meticulous and detailed. The child perks up in happiness after receiving praise and admits he was on his way to gift it to Chief Rak. Zale adds that kids in the village often make such figures for each other and every child has one.
The kid proudly explains that his figurine represents their guardian, a massive being who saved them from the two-headed fiend back then. Rocker likes the idea of having figures of a guardian. If everyone possesses one, it will make them feel safer and more confident, so he suggests everyone have one. Returning to their original conversation, Ray asks Owen what he was talking about earlier. The gray lizard reveals they discovered something strange inside the cave the frogmen were hiding in. He then eventually leads everyone to that tunnel. Once they reach the cave, they venture inside without hesitation. All the frogmen who came here had been killed, meaning no one else knows about this place for now. They suddenly stumble upon a massive stone wheel covered in intricate patterns. It's insane to think someone carved such hard stone with pinpoint accuracy. What's even more shocking is that the markings on this boulder resemble the same colopter creature they previously crushed with boulders. Seems like even Nebula isn't sure what that is. From the first glance, he can only guess they've stumbled across some sort of ancient ruin. In the perished world, you'll find all kinds of ancient ruins. Each ruin contains its own unique knowledge or treasures. If they end up finding treasure, they might even discover items with extraordinary abilities or items with terrifying demonic properties. But in this era, where civilization is still stuck in its primal stages, obtaining ancient knowledge isn't as fruitful as it sounds, since primitive hobos can't even tell what in the bunga this thing is supposed to be. Furthermore, ruins that create or change special materials or grant blessings only work within their native region. And to Lakrak, who lives a nomadic lifestyle that makes them utterly useless. There's a small chance this might be a unique relic, though Nebula hopes it isn't anything demonic. Otherwise, they're screwed. Just as they slide past that giant slab, they hear spiraling electricity humming like it's trying to communicate with them. An unknown entity welcomes the strangers who dared to enter the demonic world. Upon stepping inside, the lizard men find themselves navigating a maze of stairways, spiraling downward. Instead of taking these confusing stairs, Rocker suggests simply jumping down. Before they descend further, they notice a bunch of rats blocking their path. But the way these creatures snarl doesn't seem like normal rats at all. Zale confirms that they're nutria. They've eaten nutria before, but these ones look drastically different, simply because they've grown much larger. Another thing to note is that nutria don't normally travel in groups, nor are they aggressive. Perhaps they're trying to protect this place. Because of this, Rakra orders his soldiers to get ready for a fight. The overgrown rats start pouncing toward their supposed enemies, only to get impaled by spears and die needlessly. After dealing with them, Rock feels bad seeing so much meat go to waste and suggests they try eating them. Zale even suggests taming these giant rats and farming them like buffaloes. Speaking of farming, Owen suggests fish farming might be even better. Fish are easy to raise since they lay eggs and take care of their own hatchlings. They could easily build a dam and trap the fish during hatching season. Suddenly, one of the lizard men gets electrocuted just by touching an injured nutria. Rocker tries touching it too and gets zapped as well. Turns out these nutria are infused with a demonic energy attribute known as lightning. They can strike enemies with lightning through physical contact. Well, it looks like Nebula's worst-case scenario has become reality. This is indeed a demonic ruin, though the lightning attribute is considered relatively weak compared to the others. If Rak manages to reach the end of this ancient ruin, he can obtain this demonic power, though simply obtaining it won't make him a mage instantly. Demonic power strengthens with each generation, meaning future descendants would become true mages. There's another issue. In the perished world, magic and divine power are in conflict. According to the game's original story, the source of magic doesn't come from a god, but from an ancient evil. Thus, Heil magicians don't rely on gods at all. They aim to build their own power. As more people get influenced by magicians and pursue the magic path, many lose their faith in gods. This drop in faith deters players from choosing the path of magic. There is a loophole players can exploit, but it introduces way too many complications. Anyway, we cut back to Rakra, because now is the moment when the demonic relic begins tempting its target. The demonic entity emerges, speaking to Rakra through telepathy. It asks Rock whether he desires this power. If so, the entity is willing to give it to him. Since others can't see the demonic figure, Zell notices Rak zoning out and suggests they return. But Rayrak says he's fine and orders his companions to keep obliterating the rats. By now, Rak realizes he's the only one who can see this creature. Through telepathy, Rocker asks the first question anyone would: its identity. The creature introduces itself as the spirit that guards this place. Only those with great power can perceive it. Naturally, Rocker questions what power it's referring to. He also notices that although they can communicate without words, they can't read each other's deeper thoughts. Meanwhile, Nebula considers warning Rack about this spirit of demonic magic, but he stops when he notices a new attribute in Rack's profile. The attribute is called Deception. Nebula has no clue when it was added. The closest guess is that Rack earned it while dealing with Shunin's deceitful tactics. This gives Nebula a tiny bit of reassurance, and he decides to leave the decision entirely to Rack. Back with the entity, it reveals a bit about the electricity attribute, the power to burn all life with scorching heat, shining like the blazing sun. Rack can have this power if he wishes. Naturally, he sees no reason to decline. This is when the spirit tries introducing a stipulation. To avoid being tricked, Rack immediately declines the offer. After all, it's not free. The spirit quickly tries to salvage the negotiation, insisting the condition isn't difficult to fulfill. Once again, Rack expresses disappointment. If the spirit wanted an exchange, it should have said so from the beginning. Still, he agrees to hear the condition, but warns the spirit not to beat around the bush anymore. He wants everything stated clearly. If it hides anything, there will be no more dialogue. Right then, Zale interrupts to report that they're ready to move. Rack orders her to continue with the others. He'll follow after gathering his thoughts. Meanwhile, the spirit lays out its terms. It claims it has been sealed in this ruin and cannot move freely. It wants Rock to descend further and kill the ruin guard protecting the seal. Once freed, it promises to grant all its powers. Before accepting the deal, Rack wants confirmation. Will he gain the same power to zap enemies like those rats? The spirit doubles down. As it said before, its power is called electricity. For now, it only manifests as crackling sparks, but with each use, it grows stronger. Eventually, Rack would even be able to summon lightning. Given the growth potential, Rack could become powerful enough to rival a god. This power is actually too immense for one person alone. So, Rack has the option to share it with the tribe, or he could monopolize it entirely for himself through a ritual. Rack acknowledges everything the spirit explained, but he still can't understand one thing. How did a being capable of granting such overwhelming power end up sealed? Well, according to the spirit, it was that very power that led to its downfall. People usually interpret strength as a threat, and they typically lock down anything they fear. Rack finds it ironic that the spirit openly admits it's in fact dangerous. At this point, he suspects the spirit is hiding something. Either the power isn't as great as advertised, or the harm it brings far outweighs the benefits. It would be great if the spirit just came clean about what it's hiding, because Rack doesn't want things getting complicated. He decides to head back and collapse the cave's entrance, making sure no one ever stumbles across this place again. The spirit panics and promises to reveal everything it can. It identifies itself as a being descended from those who ruled the world in the distant past, the so-called ancient demons long forgotten by time. The gods are so ancient that they cannot remember their own origins, and neither can this spirit. No matter how hard it tries, the only thing it knows is that it has been sealed for eternity. A power with an unknown origin intoxicates people precisely because its source is unknown. But our chat of a lizard is different. He isn't falling for it blindly. Rack recalls the Blue Lizard tribe leader and the Frogman leader as perfect examples of people corrupted by power. Demonic magic in particular is what intoxicates people the most. What makes it worse is that this stingray-looking spirit could bestow its powers to any random person. It doesn't matter if the receiver is someone with noble intentions or someone harboring malicious ones. Gods bestow power by their own will, but this spirit's gifts can fall into the hands of anyone, even the undeserving. To make matters worse, whoever wields this demonic power can further enhance it and grow even stronger. Eventually, the wielder of this omnipotent power will reject the gods entirely. To avoid that outcome, Rack considers taking the power all for himself, especially since it is truly formidable and indescribably potent. It will definitely come in handy in future battles. In the end, Rack decides to set the stingray free under one major stipulation. First, Rack wants his tribe to be the sole wielder of this power. He also wants these powers to appear as if they were bestowed by the gods. That way, no one will lose their faith in God. In fact, their faith would only grow stronger. The second condition is that he wants the stingray to start believing in his god. Of course, the stingray finds the idea ridiculous for a being far more ancient than the god Rock follows. The thought of believing in such a deity feels strange. Furthermore, gods typically despise spirits of demonic magic, but Rakra counters the stereotype. He believes his god isn't some average deity. The blue insect god is generous to beings who hold value. Since the stingray is useful enough, it goes without saying that the blue insect god would approve of it already. Still, the stingray isn't sure whether the god Rack speaks of would accept it right off the bat. Rack promises that if the stingray accepts the terms, his god is benevolent enough to make an exception. The stingray then reveals a small secret. Not only is it trapped in this ruin, it is also the sole ruler of this place. Everything here, from the creatures to the ruin guardian Rack defeated, is merely one of its minions. The stingray was simply testing Rock's strength by putting him through all this trouble. For that, the entity apologizes, but Rack is willing to forgive it. After all, he understands the creature's perspective as well. He knows the spirit longs to escape this cursed place and experience something beautiful the world still has to offer. Eventually, the entity asks for Rock's name, and the lizard man happily tells him. And with that, the test the stingray had been conducting finally concludes. Now, it is time for it to bestow the power Rack rightfully deserves. Promptly, Nebula receives a notification about a spirit wishing to become his subject. Upon accepting it, Nebula gains dominion over demonic magic, specifically electricity. Nebula is thoroughly satisfied with how everything turned out. Forcing a spirit of demonic magic to submit and integrating its magic into divinity is the only way to wield demonic power without suffering a penalty. The credit goes to Rack, who understood the situation well and handled it correctly. 9 years pass, and the scene transitions to the Lizard Man altar. Word has already spread that the blue insect god has bestowed Rack with the power of thunder and lightning. A human is learning the tales of the great Rakra, leader of the chosen Lizard Man tribe. The one spreading the tales is a lizard man, an admirer of Rack. The human doesn't understand why a god of insects would bestow thunder and lightning powers. In response to this, the storyteller Lizardman presents a different perspective to consider. The easiest and wise way to explain it is by imagining the color of thunder, which in their case is blue, and the name of their god, the blue insect god. The human is still confused about how the two relate. Even after the explanation, he decides to drop the topic and introduces himself as Hai. And just when Hai asks to know the lizardmen's name, they run out of time for introductions. Down the hill, a few unwanted visitors have appeared, specimens known as nullies. The lizardmen ask if he can identify these intruders. Perhaps they are subordinates of Sulkite. The man gives a thoughtful glance and realizes the oncoming threat seems defenseless and lacking vigilance. Not to mention, they aren't even armed properly, making them look like wandering NLS. The lizard men applaud Hai for such a thorough description he provided. The mysterious lizard man finally lets his hood slip off his head, revealing his face as he aims his arrow directly at the target in front of him. The lizard man in question is Owen. He fires his arrow and electrocutes those nullies on the spot. This electrocution is enough proof to the confused nullies that the person they are facing is one of the chosen ones. They decide to retreat with whatever time they have left. Meanwhile, Owen also announces his name, leaving Hai in utter shock. It's Owen, the great storyteller. Meeting him here is an honorable moment for this human. Owen feels exhausted after using his powers and decides to continue the conversation while catching his breath. A while later, he can be seen smoking a long pipe. Rumors say that the chosen ones smoke this pipe right after they use their powers. After blowing out a few smoke puffs, Owen finally feels refreshed and decides to continue their conversation. The first question the man wants answered is what could possibly make Owen serve someone else when he possesses such incredible power. I mean, Hai isn't suggesting he should betray his god, but why must he live such a difficult life? Wandering alone in the wilderness, Owen releases another cloud of smoke while mysteriously hinting that he has other reasons too. He is a sinner who once betrayed his own people. Even then, he was given a chance to redeem himself and make up for his mistakes. Through stories and characters, he is to spread the name of the blue insect god and Chief Rack throughout the continent. He chose to live this way, his own path to repentance, and it seems his efforts have been fruitful so far. There is no one in this region who doesn't know of the Blackscale tribe, and needless to say, Rack, the high priest and chief, is held in great regard. Continuing the conversation, Owen asks the man if he too is a wanderer like himself. The man introduces himself as someone from Automation Castle. It's a name Owen has never heard before. The man further reveals his intentions. He is here to find the Blackscale tribe in order to deliver a message from the Lord of Automation Castle. Well, this actually plays out in Owen's favor.
He whistles for his companion, which is a giant bird, who rushes back to its master. Unsurprisingly, the man is shocked to see a notorious cockatrice tamed so well. Owen corrects him, saying this animal is called a cockatoo, a hybrid between a cockatrice and a chicken. He then hops onto the bird's back and urges the man to do the same. He is already on his way to visit Rock, giving the man a chance to meet the Black Sail tribe in person. Though, for this favor, Owen wants the man to listen to the untold stories he wishes to share. Stories revolving around the blue insect god and the saga of the Great Rak. The scene promptly transitions to the Black Scale tribe marching down the road ahead. Yuri steps forward and informs his chieftain of distressing news. The Stargazer's death is drawing near. The Stargazer has requested to speak with Rak in his final moments. Rak immediately orders the march to halt and decides they will rest here for the night. The fact that the Stargazer himself said his end is near means he truly will die. He has proven to be the greatest clairvoyant after all. This is why they must also begin preparing for his funeral. Tonight will be one of the most sorrowful nights for Rakra. Cutting to the camp where the Stargazer is resting, Rock enters and is greeted by the nurse. She reports the dire condition the old man is in before leaving him alone. The sickly old man has weakened to the point where even keeping his eyes open feels exhausting. In his last moments, he reflects on the life he lived. He traveled uncharted territories and learned things that only he knows. On his journey, he even lost his arm and was ostracized. Only then did he meet Rock, the tribe's chief, and used his knowledge to educate others about the stars. Now he has reached the turning point in his life, the moment when every lizard man eventually requires eternal sleep to escape the pain nurtured by time. But before he departs, he is glad to spend his final moments with the tribe's chief. He wants to quiz Rak with a question nobody else seems qualified to answer. The million-dollar question, what awaits people after death? Since Rakra is the first to be chosen by their god, the favorite among them all, only he can satisfy this curiosity. He wants to know why death is called eternal sleep. Do the deceased dream forever? Is there a possibility that one might be stuck dreaming nightmares eternally? Rock responds bluntly that he doesn't know how to respond to these daunting questions. He isn't even sure what makes him qualified to answer such a philosophical question. The Stargazer recalls how the beetle god always showed them the right path whenever they were lost. Perhaps the god will continue to do the same after death. Would he also guide wandering souls? For now, Rak can't help but agree with the Stargazer as he once guided them when they were lost in mortal dust. The beetle god will guide them still, even as they journey into the realm beyond. The Stargazer has full confidence. He definitely will. He is curious to learn more about the afterlife. He doesn't want to begin his afterlife journey by meeting their god unprepared. Rocker figures that it's more fun that way. He envisions the afterlife as a vast grass field with no horizon where you can run endlessly. The wind whispering bliss and the tender grasp beneath your feet, rock mounds to rest on once you're tired, and dynamic weather that shifts with every season. The Stargazer hopes he too will have his own house in the afterlife, a place to return to whenever he feels tired. He doesn't want a tent that can be blown away with a gust of wind. He wants a solid house he can settle in. The Stargazer has always disliked tents. And speaking of which, he is currently resting in one, though he has no complaints. Soon enough, his soul will find a place to settle down. He worries whether the skies of the afterlife will have stars or not. Rak assures him that the god is considerate enough. He will definitely place stars in the sky so everyone can find their way home. Right at that moment, Rakara notices those familiar blue butterflies, a clear sign that the god is watching them. The god has arrived to claim the Stargazer's soul. Once the soul is claimed, the old lizard man is finally put into eternal sleep, no longer existing in the mortal world. It's high time for Nebula to create the afterlife his people desire. The system prompts him that the conditions for creating the afterlife have been met, giving him the option to begin the creation. He has enough resources, levels, faith, and a large archive of souls to trigger the formation of the afterlife. You see, the afterlife is a crucial mechanic in this game. A player's chances of winning increase significantly by building a good afterlife. Just like opening the gates of heaven for those who lived noble lives and punishing sinners, it can reinforce morals and ethics or function as a warrior's training ground like Valhalla. This game even allows you to send deceased warriors back into the real world, meaning they can serve as hidden aces in war, giving the player a critical advantage in later stages.
Nebula finally releases all the butterflies that signify the souls of the deceased, letting them settle in the afterlife, known as the primordial prairie. On this vast grass field rests the stargazer who opens his eyes for the first time in this place. He can sense and feel everything around him, realizing he isn't imagining anything. He isn't dreaming. This is the afterlife, the prairie he and Rockrak envisioned together, though the place lacks stone mounds to rest on and a solid house to live in. But then again, one shouldn't be too greedy. In fact, he doesn't even feel the need for a house anymore. The place is perfect, a gift anyone would cherish. Not only that, the other lizard men are here as well, sleeping peacefully. He is currently the only one awake. He decides not to disturb them and lets them rest. There is also a child among them, a young lizard man who looks familiar to the stargazer. If his memory serves him right, a catastrophe once struck when the Goblin Alliance launched an ambush, killing many members of the Lizardmen tribe. Those sneaky bastards united their clans and targeted only children and the elderly. Stargazer was one of the old ones, too. He thought they were doomed with the enemy approaching. But one young lizardman stepped forward with a weapon in hand, ready to protect those he loved. He was one of the kids Stargazer had taught, the knowledge of numbers and arithmetic. The child understood the situation and knew how to minimize losses, all thanks to the arithmetic he learned. The kid was brave and charged straight toward his demise for the greater good. At the funeral held for the warriors who couldn't return, Rockra was furious. Everyone blamed Stargazer for teaching the warriors arithmetic. Now they didn't hesitate to dive into danger, ready to expend one life to save two. Rak could do nothing but shed tears of sorrow. Even though the warriors made the wise decision, the only thing he could do in such a hopeless situation was feel frustrated. Because of this young man's sacrifice, he became the trailblazer for the other children to learn arithmetic. Anyhow, Stargazer is glad to be reunited with this brave soul. A while later, the Stargazer can be seen wandering around, wondering why they haven't met their god yet. That's when he notices someone sneaking behind a tree. Stargazer begins chasing the unknown figure, and the chase leads him right to the stargazing laboratory. The wise lizard walks forward, millions of thoughts clouding his mind. He wants to know why their god is so benevolent, why they were chosen, what makes them any different from other species. Upon entering the chamber, Stargazer notices a strange contraption on a pedestal, and the entire ceiling is adorned with glittering stars. The curious lizard climbs the stairs, acknowledging that Rockra was right. There exists a house made of stone and stars. Approaching the machine, he peeks through the nozzle and sees an entire galaxy with his own eyes. He can see the Nebula Galaxy. This is his first time seeing stars so closely. The revelation completely shifts his understanding of the cosmos. If only he could share this knowledge with the people in the real world. It would be a game-changer. Meanwhile, Nebula watches Stargazer reach this epiphany. He wants Stargazer to realize that he has perfectly followed the path shown to him. The afterlife is not merely a destination for the dead. The beliefs of their gods shape the values of their followers. When Vikings die, their people envision a paradise called Valhalla. For cultivators, they dream of a peach blossom spring. Now you can imagine what happens when a scholar enters their afterlife. It becomes a foundation for technical advancement. Nebula is glad the afterlife is functioning exactly as he desired, especially since the threat approaches faster than ever. The Clippier tribe is their current danger. These folks possess advanced ironworking skills and the ability to tame the formidable Gamchi beasts. Long story short, their technological prowess and strategic movements are far ahead of the Black Scale tribe. The only reason this tribe has such strength is likely because they're backed by another player. This means war is inevitable and Nebula must prepare. Players are slowly expanding their territorial influence. To counter this, Nebula has invested heavily in his dominion over insects, currently commanding 3 types of insect swarms. One of them is the locust swarm, which Nebula simply calls the swarm. He uses these critters to quietly sabotage players who rely heavily on agriculture. Then there's the second swarm, the virus swarm, also known as the host, which he previously used against the frogman. These critters are continually expanding their arsenal of diseases. Last but not least, the nest, which breeds all kinds of insects. This group is responsible for farming experience passively, while Rocker focuses on uniting the neighboring tribes. Given the pace Nebula is moving, he is certain it won't be long before he takes over the southern peninsula. The first major hurdle in Nebula's expansion plan is dealing with the player who commands the Null tribe.
Cutting back to our lizardmen tribe, Owen has finally arrived with Hui at Rack's resting grounds. Owen isn't thrilled to learn that Stargazer has passed away. Stargazer is so famous that even Hui has heard his name, though he's unsure whether visiting Rock on this day was the right decision. Owen reassures him that everything is fine. The black-scaled tribe considers it a good omen when a traveler joins their funerals. After all, it simply gives them one more person to share their sorrow with. The funeral ceremony begins with Rakra standing at the very front. Owen and his human companion join the ceremony as well. Hoi immediately identifies the great leader of the black-scaled tribe, the chieftain, currently allowing tears to freely stream down his face. This surprises the man. He wasn't expecting the chieftain to weep so openly. His reaction makes Owen question whether humans are incapable of expressing sorrow. Hai clarifies that humans do shed tears. They're simply expected to suppress them in public. Crying is considered a sign of weakness, and they must maintain their dignity. Dignity is a concept Owen has heard of before, but he keeps from teaching it to the other lizard men. He believes lizard men possess something far more profound than dignity. After the ceremony, he finally steps forward and greets his esteemed friend. Rack is glad to see his friend attending Stargazer's funeral. Then he notices the human guest Owen brought along. Owen explains that this man is a messenger from the Automation Castle and formally introduces him to the Trib's chieftain. Owen then leans toward Rack and quietly spills all the juicy details about this person. A short while later, Rack sits across from the visitor. While it is customary to let a guest rest before holding a meeting, Rocker wants to dive straight into business. The human acknowledges this and begins the meeting by offering a pouch, a gift from the Lord of the Automation Castle. Rack grabs the pouch and discovers a salt rock inside. The human explains that rock salt is the Automation Castle's specialty, and this is the first rock salt being gifted with no expectation of repayment. The way Hai is careful with his words, Rocker realizes that this is only the first rock. More will follow. The man confirms it only for Rakra to casually crush the rock with the strength of his grip, grinding it into powder. He instructs Hai to deliver a message back to the Automation Castle. The gift has been received, but the man wants to know why Rakra destroyed the rock. The chieftain claims it is done to please his god. Sprinkling rock salt on the floor is apparently a ritual that amuses their deity. Of course, the man knows Rakra is pulling his leg. They continue this conversation back and forth, and the conclusion becomes clear. This is Rakara's subtle way of saying he has no interest in trading with the Automation Castle. He also realizes that Rakra dislikes diplomatic rhetoric, so he decides to be blunt. First of all, he asks the chieftain why he rejected the offer. Rock makes his terms clear. He doesn't like accepting an offer that someone else previously rejected. If another tribe already declined it, then the offer must not be valuable. We insist that the Automation Castle prepared the offer exclusively for the black-scaled tribe. But Rack knows better. It is no coincidence that Owen ran into this man and brought him here. According to Owen, Hai came from the north, not the west. The Automation Castle lies to the west, and the severed ear tribe of Salkite lives in the northern wilderness. This clearly implies that Hai went to Salkite first and returned only after being rejected. Now, Rack wants the man to be honest. He knows this man is the Lord of the Automation Castle. Kohi, before continuing, here's a quick introduction to the Automation Castle. Though the castle is built of clay, it is surrounded by 5-m-high walls. Given the technological level of this era, it can easily be considered an engineering marvel. It is also one of the mysteries of the lost world, with mud soldiers maintaining and patrolling it. Inside this castle of unknown origin, humans and various tribes coexist. From an opponent's perspective, the castle is difficult to breach due to its geographical advantage. The mountain valley it sits in serves as the gateway to the rest of the continent. In other words, the Automation Castle must be secured to access the continent. Additionally, the castle has a salt mine, which is extremely valuable for livestock and food production. Back to the meeting, Rakara makes it clear that he does not believe in gifts that come without a price. And if a gift comes from someone hiding their identity, he is even more inclined to refuse. Since the Lord of the Automation Castle is neither confirming nor denying his identity, Rocker becomes even more certain. He knows the only reason this man revealed his name was to test how much the lizard men know about the castle. Inside the Automation Castle, very few people know the Lord's true name or appearance. Even within the 4 clans loyal to him, only a handful are aware of it. Additionally, the name Hai is shared among those of the Lord's bloodline, and Rock has heard rumors that the Lord has 2 sons and 3 daughters. It is clear the human standing before him is not a woman, and judging by the wrinkles on his hands, he is no longer young either. This is how Rack figured out exactly who this man really is. The Lord of the Automation Castle is thoroughly impressed by how much Rack seemingly knows about them. He doesn't recall any lizard men ever serving him closely enough for such crucial secrets to be leaked. So it's insane to think that Rack figured out this much about the Automation Castle without ever stepping foot inside. The man finally admits it. He is the Lord of the Automation Castle. He also admits that the gift he brought was legitimate. Once again, Rack isn't buying that. If there truly wasn't any price attached to that gift, then those greedy sulcate idiots would have had no reason to reject it. It seems Rack has also figured out what exactly the Automation Castle is after. By providing free salt, they want the black-scaled tribe's protection. Once the tribe starts relying on that salt, they'll inevitably worry about the castle being attacked or looted. The downfall of the Automation Castle would mean no more salt for the lizard men. Although Hui doesn't deny these intentions, he insists on calling it a trade. He even reminds Rock that the deal overwhelmingly benefits the black-scaled tribe, which is why he's curious why Rocker refused. Rack then points out the real caveat. Why should he protect the Automation Castle when he can simply take it over? If he drives out the humans, the black-scaled tribe keeps the castle, the valley, and all the resources. And there it is. This is the exact same answer got from the sulcate. The reason the deal fell apart. Of course, Hui tries to shut that down by calling it a declaration of war. But Rakra clarifies that diplomacy isn't a lizard man thing. They simply choose whichever option benefits them the most. Wai attempts to intimidate him by boasting about the power of the Automation Castle. Rack admits the black-skilled tribe would suffer casualties, but insists they can still conquer it. After all, the blue insect god is the one they have faith in. If their god decides to intervene, those tall walls around the Automation Castle will crumble like wet clay, and its soldiers will be crushed under divine might. Not to mention, the lord of the castle is sitting right in front of them. Killing him would make the conquest a child's play. The man laughs in response. He's certain Rack won't dare kill him, because if he dies, Rack loses any way of knowing who the next heir of the Automation Castle will be. At first, Rack doesn't think that information is worth much. So, Hui decides to teach him a little about a board game called Go. It's a game where players place black and white stones on intersecting lines. The strategy is simple. Surround the opponent completely. Right now, Hui represents one of those stones. This whole thing, this war, this expansion, is just a game of Go played by two gods. Rack and his opponents are merely the stones moved by higher beings. The black-scaled tribe has entered the second round facing the Nullies. This time, the thing at stake is the Automation Castle. Whoever wins this round becomes its rightful owner. Hui already knows Rakara has been meddling with the upcoming succession inside the castle. Some lizard men and their followers have reached out to his children trying to get them to believe in the lizard men's god. By now, some of his children have already begun believing. The cat is out of the bag and Rack doesn't bother hiding it. This approach is the best and cleanest way to take the Automation Castle, a method that requires almost no bloodshed. To understand how Rack made all this possible, we cut back to 3 weeks ago. Nebula is suddenly approached by Hegemonia, the second-ranked player of Perished World and his usual rival. Hegemonia tries to catch up with him like an old friend, but Nebula wants him to cut the crap and get to the point. Turns out the two of them are the players chosen to battle for the Automation Castle. The fact that it's still early in the game, and the top players are already clashing, makes things worse. This will be the final round, and whoever loses is finished forever. Nebula already knows Hegemonia's playstyle. He has insane instincts, multitasks like a monster, and thrives in early game wars, exactly the kind of fight Nebula doesn't want. So, instead of a direct war, Nebula chooses a different path. He activates contradictory prophecies. Here's how prophecy works in Perished World. A player can use the skill once their divinity hits level 6. It's basically a quest they assign themselves. Fulfilling it gives huge experience. Failing it is catastrophic. A failed prophecy makes the player lose all experience invested and all faith points tied to it. Worse, it can trigger a random negative event. Now, when two players create prophecies that contradict each other, one gets the reward and the other gets the penalty. Hegemonia is all in for it, though he wants to know what the prophecy should be about. Nebula remembers that it's almost time for the Automation Castle to select a new lord. Only the current lord knows the exact time of the succession ritual, so Nebula proposes a prophecy. Who will become the next lord of the Automation Castle? Out of the 5 children of the current lord, they have to choose one. As long as both players choose different heirs and prophesy that their chosen character will become the next lord, their prophecies are bound to contradict. Hegemonia already has the list of siblings from which they can select. The first is the eldest son, Dan, a man in his early 30s. He is strong, intelligent, and highly trusted by Hui. Since 2 of the 4 clans serving the Lord support him, he is the most likely candidate to inherit the title. Next is Jun, a man in his late 20s. He is the half-brother of Dan, and most consider him weak. He rarely appears in public and has no interest in the throne. He is supported by only 1 clan, which is from his mother's side. The third child is Jin, a woman in her late 20s who shares the same mother as Dan, the Lord's legal wife. She likes to disguise herself, sneak out for parties, and mingles well with brutes like hunters. She has the backing of the last remaining clan. Fourth is Kyoong, a woman in her early 20s. She has a different mother than the first and second child. And as far as Hegemonia knows, her mother has already passed away. There is something uncanny about Kyoong's appearance, an effect of a curse. Because of this, she has been isolated not only by the Lord, but by the clans as well. Last is the 5th child, Min, currently in her mid-teens. She is said to be highly intelligent and talented in many ways. Being the youngest, she is naturally the most beloved by the Lord. With the 5 candidates introduced, it's finally time for both players to choose their characters. Hegemonia is even willing to give Nebula as much time as he wants, but Nebula has already done his homework. He's ready to make his pick. They each pick 1 heir, and the system prepares to initiate the contradictory prophecy skill. Before the skill activates, the system warns them of the consequences. Nebula accepts and proceeds to finalize his choice. Hegemonia selects Seohee's second child, Junhui, to be the next lord of the automation castle. Nebula, on the other hand, chooses the 4th child, Kyunghui, the supposedly cursed one. Hegemonia is visibly surprised by Nebula's pick. Now that they have chosen different characters, the contradictory prophecy is officially triggered. Cut back to Rak and Hai's meeting. Hai has begun suspecting that the Black-skilled tribe and the Null tribe are deeply tied to the rumors circling around, and the fact that he's still alive after meeting the chiefs of both tribes only confirms it. Their gods are in conflict, and he is merely a stone on their board. Rock finally speaks to wrap up the conversation. He has 2 choices. He can choose Salsate, or the Black-scaled tribe, the NLs or the Lizardmen, the Raging Teeth god or the Blue Insect god. Of course, this isn't as easy as it sounds. It's like choosing between sticking your head into the mouth of a saber-toothed tiger or a cockatoo. Rak assures him that the cockatoo is the better option, but according to Salkite, the tiger's mouth is better. For now, Hai doesn't want to choose either tribe. To Rak, this sounds like Hai is surrendering himself to the fate of being just another stone. Hai decides to end the discussion and prepares to leave. But before departing, he asks Rak one last thing. Rak is also a stone on the board. Doesn't that make him angry or afraid? The lizard man simply smiles and promises to answer once everything is over. A while later, Hai reunites with his crew. After shaving off the beard he grew over the journey, he mounts his horse and heads back to the automation castle. Around 3 weeks earlier, we see Kyung Hai struggling to climb a mountain alone. Well, climb isn't quite accurate. Her cart full of salt rolled off the narrow path, leaving her clinging to a rock for dear life. Here's some background on Kyung. Ever since she can remember, she's been told she's cursed. She was shunned by the clans, accused of being the devil who killed her mother. But she doesn't blame them. Ever since childhood, she has been at the center of one freak accident after another. At 13, she fell down the market stairs. At 14, she was accused of being a salt thief and got locked up for a few days. At 15, she fell through the bathroom floor. Yes, literally. That one almost killed her. Honorable mentions include water jars falling on her head or being chased all night by a pack of rabid dogs. So, climbing this mountain shouldn't be too hard, right? Wrong. It's exhausting as hell. Right now, she's reached a steep section with nothing left to grab onto. If she jumps quickly enough, she might reach the next ledge, but it's risky. Like, very risky. Thankfully, she doesn't need to resort to such dangerous theatrics. A lizard man is waiting over the cliff to lend her a hand. It seems like the girl is seeing this lizard man for the first time and wants him to introduce himself. However, the lizard man doesn't think she should worry about formal introductions given her precarious situation. He finds her quite bold for managing to take a cart fully loaded with salt down such a narrow path prone to landslides. If only the wheel hadn't broken, she would have crossed the mountains already. Upon her insistence, the lizard man finally introduces himself as Saren Mule. She expresses her gratitude for the much-needed help and attempts to go on her way, but Saren stops her because he isn't done yet.
The situation takes a twisted turn when she realizes that this lizard man knows her real name. She immediately reaches for her knife while shooting deadly daggers through her eyes. Saren immediately surrenders, claiming that he learned her name from Chief Rack. To be honest, he admits that the chief is the one who ordered him to find her. The girl wants to confirm if he is actually talking about Rack, the hunter, the lizard man of thunder, and the first chosen one. What confuses her even more is why Rack would be looking for her. Saren doesn't know all the details, but the chief is most likely seeking her out due to the rumors circulating about her. It seems Kyuong has no clue what rumors he is talking about. She's been out of the automation castle for a while now, traveling to buy silk. According to Saran, the first rumor claims that the Lord's second child will become the new lord of the automation castle. As for the second, it claims the Lord's fourth child will take the throne. Hearing rumors revolving around her, it's a no-brainer that these are fake. After all, she is an illegitimate child who isn't even interested in the automation castle's politics. It is highly likely that one of her brothers spread those false rumors to gain something out of it. So she figures she isn't the person Saren should be looking for. Instead, he'd better go find her other siblings. Internally, however, she finds her situation quite distressing. This lizard man knows her true identity, even though the children of the Lord must keep their identities a secret. Even though this guy is strong, she feels she has no option but to take her chances and kill him. It looks like Saren knows exactly what she is thinking. This is why he reveals that he has also been ordered to protect her. Of course, this throws her into confusion, prompting the lizard man to explain the situation. Even though she deems the talk of the town to be mere false rumors, the main families of the automation castle wouldn't just overlook them. They will do their absolute best to eliminate her to reduce the variables in play before the succession ceremony. The woman refuses to consider his help, claiming she is more than capable of protecting herself, but Saren sticks to his guns. He will honor the orders he has been given. Eventually, she pulls back her bangs and shows him the horns protruding from her head. She has trimmed them, but they will grow back from the base. It's a curse she has been haunted by. Born after tearing through her mother's belly with these very horns and killing one of her siblings along the way. She believes she only attracts misfortune to others, which is why she prefers to be a loner. Saren feels sad about her condition, but he doesn't really care if she is cursed or not. He is here to represent the will of the tribe as per the orders of the chief. If she refuses, he will be left with no choice but to use force. Kung internalizes her situation. If scaring this big guy doesn't work, she has no option but to cave in. Now that she thinks about it, given the terrain, traveling with this lizard man isn't a bad idea. After all, he has sworn to protect her life, which means he's going to help her if she puts herself in danger. First, she needs to get the silk, so she decides to go down and then come back up. Saren reminds her of the injuries on her leg instead of diving deep into the thick of it recklessly. It would be way better if she learned to ask someone for help. The girl gets embarrassed. A while later, they are on their way with Saren carrying the silk. As they walk, she questions how he figured out her location. Well, Saren had been looking for her under the alias everyone knows, Manji. Her associates didn't even ask for a bribe for the information. They were more than happy to give it up for free. They also told him that she holds an ambition of starting her own silk business. From there, Saren learned that one of them even lent her a cart, which she never returned. This girl basically ripped off the poor guy, and it has been a few days since she went missing. Saren finds it hilarious that she wants to build a big business, yet she is trampling all over the fundamental of every business, which is trust. After a short walk, the automation castle is right in their sights. Then, things take a twisted turn. Someone tries to ambush her with a thrown dagger. Saren shields her with his own body, leaving the dagger lodged in his hand. The ones trying to assassinate her are these green guys. Seems like the succession battle has already begun. In no time, Saren manages to dismantle all the goblins. Even Kong is surprised by how skilled this lizard man is in combat. Speaking of which, she recalls learning about an infamous lizard man warrior called Yuri. Saren confirms the rumors. He is actually the best warrior in the black-scaled lizard tribe. In fact, he learned all his techniques from Yuri. As for how he learned the art of medication, he picked it up from Zal when he was working as her errand boy. Exol is the one in charge of the black-scale trib's internal affairs, as well as the wife of Rock. Since Siren had been under her supervision, it's no wonder he is a talented individual and picked up a few tricks. Furthermore, the fact that he learned how to fight from Yuri explains why he holds an important position in the tribe. The fact that someone like him came to protect her might be a huge game-changer. Suddenly, she gets shocked seeing Saren handing over her silk. Of course,
She doesn't like the idea, but it's crucial to act sycophantic. A while later, they finally reach the automation castle, only to realize that the gates are closed. Authorities are preventing people from entering. Kyung approaches one of the travelers and questions why the doors are shut. The fox guy warns her in particular not to enter, especially since she is a silk merchant. Even if she enters, she won't be allowed to exit. It goes without saying that some internal affairs are causing distress in the automation castle. In the household of the Guo family, Kyung meets her business partner, Guo Jung, who lent her the cart. Instead of feeling gratitude, she is out here lashing out at him for lending her a defective piece, though Guo Jung believes it's her own fault. Anyhow, he asks if anything noteworthy happened during her travels. Other than the cart crash, Kong reveals the assassination attempt, which she luckily survived thanks to this lizard man. Siren introduces himself and Go-jun responds in kind. He is the leader of the Geo family, one of the 4 families of the automation castle. Siren feels glad to announce that the goblins who attempted the assassination claimed that the Zhou family was unrelated to the incident. The leader of the Zhou family doubles down on this, stating his family wouldn't stoop so low. Kyung then questions him about the reason behind the strict surveillance in the automation castle. She is pretty sure no one would give a damn just because the cursed 4th daughter was ambushed. Well, it turns out an assassination attempt took place inside the castle too. Now that the castle lord has left, a leading heir of the automation castle, her brother, Hai Dan, went missing. A while later, all 3 visit the room where the assassination attempt took place. The room fills Kyoung with nostalgia. She was very close to her brother at a young age, but they grew distant as time passed. Saren suddenly notices blood staining the floor. The stains clearly show that someone tried to wipe the blood away. If the puddle of blood was this big, it doesn't take much effort to deduce that the victim is already dead. Even the authorities found the evidence, but the problem is they couldn't find his corpse. After finding these traces, they blocked off the castle gates so the culprit wouldn't be able to take the corpse out. The corpse will definitely rot and start to smell. If that happens, it's only a matter of time before the culprit is caught. But then again, Kyung finds it odd. The culprit mustn't be dumb enough to not consider this possibility before committing the murder. Regardless, it's not her problem, and she decides not to think too much of it. Out of the blue, she senses an ominous presence. Something dark is talking to her. The entity is willing to expose the culprit. As she is occupied with her internal turmoil, Saren can clearly sense that she is feeling unwell. It looks like she has found the answers they had been investigating. She wants to know about a person who possesses a pot big enough for a corpse to be stored in without being suspected. They need a person who utilizes pots used to store meat. 2 names come to mind, either the owner of a butcher shop or a hunter. If someone wanted to prolong the decay of a corpse, preserving it in salt is an optimal solution. Someone who can easily take a hunter around with them in the castle. And someone who has a lot of meat preserved in salt within pots at their home. Someone who naturally visits the office. If they are to narrow down the culprit with the conditions mentioned, the only person that fits this description is also a candidate for succession. That person is Hai Jin, Kong's sister. Of course, Kong's suspicions were right on the mark. Thus, even after she shared this tip with only a few individuals within the castle, by the time everyone had learned of Dan's death, they were already considering Jin as the main suspect. With no choice, Jin was forced to flee the automation castle since she was exposed, but her journey was cut short by her younger sister, Hai Min. She ambushed her own sister and had her killed right in front of her eyes. Then she too got ambushed by her brother and stabbed to death along with the men who came to take care of Jin. With 3 siblings already pushing up daisies, Jin's path is mostly clear. The only target left for this man was our girl Kong. In the following days, Kyung got the shocking news that Jin and Min were found dead. At the same site where the other bodies were discovered, they found Dan's body too. By now, even a fool would understand who is behind all of these assassinations. Of course, that's Junhui. He knew Jin would strike first, and that men would see it as an opportunity. Since he knew his siblings' sinister plans, he waited until they got rid of each other. She can tell that the assassination attempt she faced was also his doing. If it weren't for Saren saving her life, people would have thought of it as nothing beyond a robbery. It's finally time Kyung is actually in trouble, and she is totally prepared to face it. Gi-young then briefs them about the recent meeting the Geo clan held. Although other families are rooting for Yan Hui since he has the upper hand, the Geo clan has decided to gamble on her. The girl is thoroughly grateful for the gesture. To this, Jung makes it clear that they aren't favoring her out of their relationship, but because it is a calculated decision, the entire Geo clan wants her to survive.
Before leaving, she promises to try her best. This time, she indeed wants to survive and get over it. There is finally someone who has actually put their faith in someone like her, and she doesn't want to let them down. In the following days, Kyoong is in one of the heated meetings. The members of the Geo clan want to get rid of Junhui altogether rather than just dodging his assassination attempts. But then again, it's not that easy to pull off. The Sang clan as well as the Su clan are both on his side. The only way they can win this succession war is if they get at least the Su clan on their side. While they argue back and forth, Kyoong notices her antlers growing at an unusual speed. They are growing so fast nowadays that she doesn't want to bother cutting them over and over. Saren wouldn't even have let her try had he known that she would bleed if she cut them. Anyhow, she reflects on her current situation as a whole. A week ago, she was just running around trying to do some silk business. Now, she is stuck here fighting for succession somehow. As if on cue, a reporter comes running to report the early arrival of the Lord of the Automation Castle. It is estimated that he will probably arrive by tomorrow morning. Also, there is a message that scouts wanted to reach Kong only. As he leans closer to whisper the juicy details to her, we realize that this bastard is an assassin too, but he is quickly dealt with by Kyoong's bodyguards. The guy was taken down before he could even swing the dagger he was hiding. This guy was actually from the Geo clan, which means that he was bribed by the opposing party. To think that they can't even trust the people around them only makes the situation worse. To make matters worse, a full-blown battle has erupted outside. Junhui is dead set on taking care of her before the Lord of the Automation Castle arrives, which is why she is told to flee before things take a twisted turn. They've got no choice but to use this underground pathway. The girl is not really thrilled to walk through this underground gutter, but they have no choice and eventually hop inside. As they walk through this stinky place, Saren isn't expecting the girl to hold up so well. Unsurprisingly, she claims that she already has first-hand experience falling into latrines before. She almost died that day when she fell, but thankfully a huge pile of excrement cushioned her fall. She then further rolled down all the way to the sewage without getting hurt. But there wasn't a single ray of light in there. Just when she was about to succumb to her terrible fate, she saw floating lights. She followed that perilous lighting and managed to get out of the gutter. The insects that showed her the path were fireflies. And the fact that those insects don't really belong in a place like this speaks to it being a miracle. Well, it doesn't take Saren too long to realize who exactly rescued her. Though he doesn't say it out loud, he pretends that it must be some different species that stumbled into this latrine. Eventually, they get to the exit door. Saren decides to take the lead from here. If he doesn't come back after some time, she is ordered to run in the opposite direction. While that guy is gone, Kyoong is left there to think about how considerate Saran actually is. It is only because of him that she is even alive at this point. It's been 3 weeks that she has been arguing against his will, but he is stubbornly upholding his word. Suddenly, she hears some unpleasant sounds. This reminds her of the warning he gave her about running back. But instead of retreating, she rebels against her fears and dashes straight ahead to rescue her friend. As soon as she gets out of the gutter, she spots Saren pierced by a spear. Her brother Jun is also there, feeling smug about taking care of this lizard already. Saren, however, refuses to show any signs of weakness despite being injured. Jun finds the lizard quite bold for his persistence. He orders his lackey to take care of Kyoong while ignoring the lizard, but Saren isn't letting that happen. He charges forward and begins striking down those pesky humans left and right. After breaking off the spear lodged in his back, he expresses his frustration at her for making the wrong decision, even though running away was the optimal choice. Nonetheless, he also likes her boldness. She willingly took the plunge to fight rather than flee. He reckons that she is just like him. Even though he was only ordered to protect her, not risk his life, he did so nonetheless. As they stand side by side, ready to fight their enemy, Jun orders his lackeys to take down either of them and earn a cart full of silk. As much as those lackeys want to take down this lizard man, they are hesitant too. They are dreading the possibility that this lizard man might be the chosen one. But their wise leader reminds them that if he were one of the chosen, he wouldn't have hidden his power until he got stabbed in the back with a spear. Meanwhile, Saren is assessing his current situation. The wall on the other side is mostly concentrated salt crystal, and it is directly connected to a salt mine nearby. He tells the girl that they are going to run to the right, much to her confusion, since there is a wall standing tall there. Saren admits that he is not a chosen one, but that doesn't mean he is just your run-of-the-mill lizard. After all, he is the second-best warrior of his tribe. As the enemy charges ahead, he tells her to get ready to sprint in the right direction. My guy puts his hands over his head and bulldozes through the wall like a goddamn armadillo, much to everyone's shock. Seeing them escaping, Jun yells at his goons to chase after them. Even though our duo has escaped the immediate danger, Syrian is bleeding heavily, making his escape hard. To make matters worse, they hit a dead end in the tunnel. Before he bleeds to death, she suggests pulling the rest of the spear out, but he decides against it. If he is to pull it out now, he is going to bleed uncontrollably. Unexpectedly, Kung begins crying. Saren is astonished to see this, not because he is shocked to see her crying, but due to the fact that he is happy she is weeping for him. The girl blames herself for the misfortune she brings to people around her, and she blames her curse for this. However, Saren doesn't think that way. He reminds her of the astronomical amount of threats they have faced over the last 3 weeks. Despite it all, she has overcome everything and survived. Normally, people would call that good luck. This is the moment that changes everything for her. Her perspective indeed changes on her situation, forcing her to acknowledge that she is indeed blessed with good luck. Saren recalls the first time they met. He went down the cliff to retrieve the silk that day. While doing so, he noticed something strange about the cart. There were signs that someone had intentionally damaged the part of the cart that's supposed to hold the axle in place. She borrowed the cart from Jung before the fight for lordship had truly begun. As for past events, it is also suspicious that the flooring of the latrine broke so easily under the weight of a mere child. He believes that, unrelated to the fight for lordship, someone had been after her life. Once again, that ominous, cursed sound echoes in her head. The voice exposes Kong for pretending not to know the fact that she is being targeted. In fact, she also knew who has been after her and who actually wants her dead. Eventually, her brother and his goons finally corner the duo. He is feeling smug that they are now stuck deep inside the salt mine. They won't be able to break through the walls and escape like before. After getting the signal, the underlings rush toward the injured opponent. Currently, the only thing Saren is banking on is the luck that has always helped Kong escape deep. And then, a miracle finally happens. A blob of electricity begins to materialize between the two parties, and out pops the stingray. The stingray has arrived to announce the good news. Siren Mule has been chosen. The lackey don't understand what this creature is yapping about. As for their scummy leader, he is losing his patience and yells at them to charge the front lines. Meanwhile, Saren is quite astonished to become one of the chosen ones. After all, there had only been 5 people from his tribe. Counting him makes it 6. The only other possibility is that one of the existing chosen ones has died, and that person is Stargazer, leaving an open spot for a successor. Since Saren is the second most courageous person in his tribe, he is qualified to take the mantle. From now on, Saren will be acting as a proxy for God's will. Those who carry God's will possess the ability to borrow and draw upon God's power too. From this point onward, he is officially one of the chosen ones. Looks like the tides of battle are about to turn. Since the monster has disappeared, the leader orders his minions to seize the opportunity and strike. The goons unsuspectingly begin running toward their demise. As for our Chad Lizard, he is out here totally supercharged with electricity. After yanking the spear out of his belly, he quickly cauterizes the wound to stop the bleeding. The poor guys heading toward him have likely failed to read the grim situation they're in. After extending his hand, he calls down a thunder strike, electrocuting the entire flock and knocking them out cold. The ones remaining standing quickly turn on their heels and begin retreating along with their coward of a leader. Of course, I guess they are missing out on their only chance to capture our duo because Saran is exhausted as hell after that move. But Kyuong doesn't seem to realize it. Given how strong this power packs a punch, why don't the Black Scale tribe fight the Clipped Ear tribe? It seems like Saren knows the reason. This power has drawbacks that restrict the wielder from exploiting it. Saren can already feel some sort of mental exhaustion kicking in. Perhaps this is why Owen would always smoke a cigarette after using this power. This makes Kyuong concerned about him, but he assures her he's fine. In fact, he is feeling a little better now that he isn't losing any blood. A while later, Saren can be seen frying the others in his path too. Let's not forget about Hegemonia, who had placed his bet on Yan Hai, the candidate who was supposed to win the succession ceremony. Hegemonia has no choice but to step in and not let Nebula snag the victory. He sends his saber-toothed Zed Lion to fight against Saren. Our duo has no clue where this overgrown cat came from. The tiger runs out of patience and lunges. Saren doesn't hold back either. He uses all of his power and electrocutes the big cat, roasting it alive. At this point, Kong is losing her brain cells.
How in the does a saber-toothed tiger infiltrate the automation castle and come straight into the salt mines? She has seen so much unbelievable in just the span of a few hours that she wants to faint. Seeing yet another bizarre thing outside this cave is the last thing she wants to happen. Outside the cave, they finally cornered Jun, who has the audacity to complain about his situation. His audacity surely gets on Kong's nerves since he was the one who started all this. Instead of taking accountability for his actions, the bastard pins all the blame on her for meddling in the fight for inheritance, which supposedly should have been only between siblings. He blames her for involving outsiders, a species that poses a direct threat to humans. The guys hiding behind our duo suddenly launch an ambush only for them to get slaughtered unnecessarily. Jun can't believe his stupid eyes. The display of sheer stamina and strength this lizard man is showing is unfathomable, especially given the fact that he should have collapsed from exhaustion a long time ago due to blood loss. Finally, our girl snaps back at this hypocrite of a brother. He is the one who is detrimental to the development of the automation castle. The automation castle is a place that lives off trade, but by not getting involved with nearby forces, they are voluntarily isolating themselves. Because of that, the automation castle's influence may weaken, and nearby forces who harbor ill intentions might invade the castle to take control. If only her brother were a little smarter, he wouldn't have made these stupid decisions. On the other hand, she ain't dumb and numb-minded like the rest of her siblings. She has a desire to do something far greater for the cause of the automation castle. Rather than being selfish, seems like her words have no effect on this low-level scum. He claims he never considered her one of his siblings. With that declaration, he spreads his fan, which clearly indicates that the guy is up to something. Perhaps it's some sort of signal. She suspects this gesture is meant to alarm a hidden assassin somewhere in the warehouse in front of them. Well, there is indeed an arrow heading toward them. Kung's ominous reflection makes her aware of it. The reflection makes it abundantly clear that they are about to die soon. If the arrow isn't stopped, she is already too slow. Saren, on the other hand, has noticed the incoming arrow. However, he is short by a second. The ominous entity would have warned her about this assassin even before the arrow was released, but her horns aren't fully grown yet, so that possibility was out of the equation. Now, Kyung got to imagine a way in which she successfully evades the oncoming arrow. The girl thinks for a moment, and figures that blowing wind can help the arrow ricochet in a different direction. The ominous entity approves of this possibility, and promptly, it generates a small tornado, causing the arrow to veer off course. Everyone is shocked, and so is Kyaewong. She is questioning the true nature of this ominous entity. What is this entity actually? A curse or luck? The entity claims she is neither of those. It can see limitless possibilities for the future and can choose the path that will be most suitable for the situation and bring the most benefits. In simpler terms, the entity can manipulate probability, right? Then a system notification informs Nebula about Hikkyung awakening a demonic property. It's called probability. Hegemonia feels like the biggest clown out here for thinking that what Kong had going for her wasn't a curse after all. Bro is crashing out over his dumb mistake while Nebula is having a dab moment. Hegemonia is damn certain that this character had been identified as a cursed entity. So what gives? He blames Nebula for altering the character's description. But Nebula reminds his rival that her description had always been like this even before they came into this world. This begs the question, how did Nebula know that she had a demonic property? Well, Nebula didn't know from the beginning either. He had thought it was a curse that brings bad luck as well. But then Nebula realized something. The countless unlucky-looking incidents that had happened to Hikkyung were actually assassination attempts people made against her. He had realized this detail when the washroom floors broke. It was because the head maid had destroyed the floorboards before the girl came inside. However, even in situations where she could have gotten stabbed or buried alive, the girl walked away just fine. It was then that Nebula finally had an epiphany. The thing inside Huyong wasn't the worst curse of unlikeliness, but the demonic property of probability, which can bring a lot of fortune if used well. Even though Nebula got lucky with his pick, Hegemonia believes that he hasn't lost yet. His character, Junhui, still hasn't been defeated. The situation only swings in his favor when the Lord of the Automation Castle also arrives. He commands everyone to stop. Since the Lord himself has come back, the family would need to cease fighting. To end all of this chaos, the Lord will choose a successor. Hegemonia is dead certain that the Lord will pick Haijun as his successor. After all, both father and son share similar political alignments, putting at a significant disadvantage.
Here is where Nebula strongly disagrees with his rival. The moment of truth has finally arrived. The Lord steps forward, orders the skirmish to cease, and decides to announce the next successor on the spot. But before he makes his decision, Kong wants to ask a fairly simple question. Why have you tried your absolute best all my life to assassinate me? This takes the Lord by surprise. Though he seems prepared to encounter this situation, the spectators, as well as June, are shocked to hear her bold accusation. The Lord doesn't deny it, but wants her to confirm since when she found that out. The girl claims she knew about it for a long time now. She just decided not to think about it and overlooked it. She just never wanted to believe it. The truth is, the reason he tried to kill her was the fact that her mother passed away while giving birth to her. She also knows that he intentionally tainted her name with the cursed label, a lie he stirred up by himself. The father finally confesses his wrongdoings. His wife's body was too weak to give birth, and thus she passed away. That woman was special to him, and losing her inflicted an astronomical amount of pain upon him. At that moment, the only word that came to his mind was curse. The father chose to believe that Kyoong's horns were the curse that caused her mother, Rio's death. The position of Castle Lord was full of never-ending difficult days, and she had taken away the only thing the Lord held precious. Once the confession ends, Kyoong gives her father the moment to make his final decision. However, his son June immediately interrupts, questioning his father if he is going to be swayed by guilt and pick her over him. The father reassures his worried son. Even though he is tired and emotionally drained, he will make his judgment purely for the sake of the automation castle. This is the last decision he can make with free will as a pawn of the gods. The Lord takes a breath as he is about to state his choice. Meanwhile, one of the gods in question, namely Hegemonia, begs and prays for the gods he knows to have the situation favor him. Nebula finds it quite ironic. Praying to gods won't do jack because Hegemonia himself is the god. Meanwhile, Kong's demonic property comes forth. And just by reading the mere lip movement of the Lord, it deduces that Kong is to be the next owner of the automation castle. Though Kyoong doesn't seem too happy about it, the reason is that her father is merely choosing her out of guilt. Even if he isn't aware of it, if she is chosen, it won't take long for rumors to spread that the Lord gave up his position to his daughter out of pity. June is further going to fuel these rumors. This is going to make her doubt herself, believing that she was merely chosen because of her luck, not merit. That's why the 4 families of the automation castle will refuse to follow her. And even the position of castle lord she receives will be at risk. Keeping this in mind, she insists to the demonic property that she doesn't want to be chosen as her father's successor. She wants to obtain that position by herself. So before her father designates her as the next lord, she interrupts and proclaims her desire to become the lord of the automation castle. Her confident declaration leaves everyone stunned, especially her scummy brother. You see, directly demanding the position of lord from the Lord himself would be considered rebellion and a direct threat to his authority. That's exactly why everyone is wondering where the hell she got the courage to question his authority and threaten him in front of all the soldiers. In order to humble everyone around her, she gestures to Saren, and the lizard man summons forth his electrical powers, causing a wave of shock. At this point, it should be pretty clear to everyone that Saren is a chosen one of the Black Sail tribe. Even if he doesn't have the ability to kill everyone here, he certainly has the ability to kill the Lord and take her away. However, June tries to convince his father that they are just putting up an act of bravado. The lizard man is already bruised and battered. He has no strength to hold out against their men, but the father thinks otherwise. Back when he visited the Black Scale tribe, he had already observed the might of the Chosen One. For one thing, he is damn sure that Rock isn't someone they should mess with. The Lord internalizes his situation. Rocker is a pawn of the gods, a stone on the table that is supposed to act as a deterrence, making sure the Lord of the automation castle isn't making foolish decisions. Anyhow, he warns her that if the Lord of the automation castle is to die without designating his successor, the families of the automation castle will delegate someone as the next heir from within their families, meaning will have no chance. Of course, Kong is aware of the situation, and she is prepared for it. If that happens, she will merely lend a little help from the Black Scale tribe and expel everyone out of the castle who dares to stand against her. The scummy brother uses her words to yell at her, calling her ill-intentioned trash. At this point, the Lord of the Automation Castle knows what he is supposed to do. He steps forward and officially hands out his position to Kyoong. Unsurprisingly, the scummy brother sinks down in utter defeat, his knees losing all strength. A few days go by and the automation castle is livelier than ever, with its local economy seeing exponential growth. Everyone attributes all the credit to the fight that happened for the succession. The economic shift and potential growth are insane, with more and more traders visiting the place. Species of different races and people from different walks of life are all coming in. The important four families have been quiet given the growth of the automation castle. This clearly indicates that they aren't rebelling against the new lord's drastic decisions. Unsurprisingly, June is out here listening to all this pleasant gossip spreading around regarding the positive change that the new automation castle lord has brought. Being the scummy brother who got defeated, he can't stomach it and decides to sneak out of the castle during the night. He plans to abandon his home and find somewhere else to amass influence and power, making sure he returns with a bang. As he is about to depart, Saren walks into the scene, interrupting the guy's flight. They argue for a while before June is on his way, since he isn't entitled to tell others where he is going. Well, Saren agrees to this much. June doesn't owe him any explanation. However, he wouldn't like someone like June to live much longer, as he could become a pain in the ass later on for the entire automation castle. As the man rides his horse out of the castle, an assassin goblin leaps up from the castle wall upon Saren's gesture and claims the bastard's head. With June officially dead, Hegemonia has finally lost to Nebula. Nebula likes how his rival is acknowledging his defeat so gallantly. But then again, acknowledging defeat is part of the process that helps you grow to become a better player. After Hegemonia acknowledged his loss, he left without any resistance. He promised that he would take the Null tribe across the continent and go until they reached the end of the West. It seemed he didn't really care about failing the prophecy, nor was he worried about the consequences of failing a prophecy. He is going to march forth while absorbing techniques from the continent's residents. With the withdrawal of Hegemonia's species, this gives Nebula an opportunity to use the already paved roads and increase his forces. The North Shore regions and the peninsula's southern half are all coastal areas, so Nebula might get the opportunity to utilize that. The abominable god those frogmen had with them possessed dominion over the sea. But since the serpent only occupied a lake, he was not able to put his dominion to use. But since Nebula has that sea dominion, coastal areas may benefit him after all. That's a matter for later. For now, he wants to see the current lord. Cutting to Hyong, the girl falls asleep and begins to descend into some sort of dream. Upon opening her eyes, she is met by a mysterious figure in a cloak standing in front of her. It doesn't take her long to realize that it's the blue insect god. Instantly, she falls down to her knees and bows in respect, grateful for the help and generosity the blue insect god has shown her so far. She is just a mere human, and doesn't feel she is valuable to the almighty god. So, she isn't sure how she is going to pay him back for his help. Nebula suddenly conjures up an iron plate in the palm of his hands. It's a metal that merchants use to trade. She openly admits to being short-sighted and apologizes for not understanding what the Almighty wants to tell her. Perhaps she considers that God is asking her for money. She is suddenly spooked by Saren, who comes from behind. She is shocked that how is he even here, and before she can ask him any questions, her vision fades, snapping her back into reality. She knows what she saw wasn't just a simple dream, but she has no clue what the blue insect god was trying to tell her. Since he was showing her that iron plate, perhaps it's something related to that. Just as she is brainstorming what that plate might mean, she hears someone boast about the quality of the silk in the market. It's some lizard man who is selling the silk, and the buyer has never seen such fine material before. The buyer introduces himself as someone who traveled from the west all the way here. It's a place where the sun dawned. With the Null tribe displaced, the road from the west was finally open for him to pass. The lizard man is glad to meet someone from the west, and wouldn't mind trading with him. The buyer, who is supposedly a troll, wants to buy all the silk. In exchange for that, he is willing to give iron plates. He has an entire pouch of these iron plates, and is hoping that it would be enough to justify the price of the good quality silk he is getting. Well, the lizard man seems happy to see the amount and instantly agrees to hold this trade. However, Kiawong interrupts the transaction and wants this troll to put his money back. She has already purchased this silk. The troll doesn't seem thrilled to hear it and wants the lizard man to confirm if it's true. Under the sharp gaze of Kong, the poor lizard man has no choice but to validate the young girl's words. Not wanting any trouble, the orc proceeds to be on his way. While the only reason she interrupted the transaction is the fact that the lizard man was selling it at a very low price point. The lizard man argues that their transportation cost has lessened ever since the Null tribes left, so selling the silk at such low prices still fetches a good amount of profit. Of course, Kyung Hui knows this much too.
After all, she is a merchant. But here is the real deal. Only the Black Scale tribe is capable of producing such niche products, meaning even if it costs very little to produce these niche items, they don't really need to lower the price along with it. Any product that falls into the luxury category can be charged for more. There is also another important thing she wants to mention here. It's the iron plate the troll had earlier. Thinking that the automation castle may be able to smelt this iron and make weapons out of it. It is at that moment Kong realizes what the blue insect god meant. He certainly wants her to create weapons. Of course, she proudly affirms that the automation castle can handle it. However, it looks like she is going to face some shame soon. The blacksmith she tasked to do this smelting task has came back with some caveats. At first, the dude was all confident that he could handle the job, so Kyuong agreed. However, now the blacksmith reports that he was only able to produce literally a single spear point, working all night with all his might. What usually takes around 10 hits to mold iron is taking at least 30 to 40 hits. That's why he can't work on this for a prolonged period of time. If he is to take a moment of respite in between, the bloomer will cool down, which is going to consume more charcoal than necessary. Not to mention, training an entire staff just to smelt this metal is an entirely different ballgame. Eventually, Kyung dismisses the blacksmith with disappointment. While the blacksmith feels happy to finally be over this that is way above his paycheck, Kyung is feeling hopeless about how she is going to honor the promise she made with Chief Rock. Back then, she confidently took the job. But now, retracting her words would make her look like a useless partner. However, Saren is dead set that Rack wouldn't take any kind of offense. After all, he is one of the most benevolent people out here. He wouldn't even say anything that might remotely make her feel bad about her failure on the job. Saren may be right, but Kyuong still doesn't want to lose face like this. Eventually, she decides to utilize her last resort. She wants him to follow her as there is something she's got to confirm for herself. They eventually descend into a dark corridor where they stumble across a mud monster cruising around. These creatures have free will of their own, so no one in Automation Castle can boss them around. However, these mud dolls aren't the highlight of this visit. She eventually opens the door and shows Saren what lies behind it. Well, there is a water wheel spinning with the help of a waterfall. It's the first time Saren has seen such an unusual contraption. This waterfall is Automation Castle's water reserve. Thankfully, it's located inside the inner palace, so there is no way in hell the enemy can loot their water. The important detail to note here is the wheel under that waterfall, a kind of contraption that helps produce incredible power without rest. Kyung not only wants to utilize its power to smelt iron plates, but she also wants to evolve this power source to revolutionize the entire Automation Castle. For that, she wants Saren's help, and the guy is willing to lend a hand. A few days later, Kyuong has already started working on new blueprints for their advanced water he designed to generate more energy than they've ever had. They have increased the height of the waterfall and added extra wheels for additional power. She seeks Zale's thoughts on the blueprints. Unsurprisingly, she approves of the new design. Since they have enough water flowing, she is certain that it can spin all the wheels. Though implementing and building this new design will require a lot of manpower, resulting in the need for a substantial budget. After all, they would need to import sturdy wood that doesn't grow in this area in large quantities. Kyuong isn't concerned with money-related problems. But even if they have enough money, Zale wants her to look at things from another angle. The main issue is whether they can actually make all the spending worth it. Kung's position within the castle is already quite weak, and using a large lump of funds to gain barely anything in return would attract a lot of criticism. A few days later, Kung can be seen sitting alone, brainstorming new ideas. She even invokes her demonic property of probability to foretell the future for her. The demonic property clarifies that she doesn't wield the power of prophecy. Like she can't see the future and predict what is going to happen. She can merely manipulate the current moment to tilt the odds in her favor. In simpler terms, she doesn't watch the movie of the future. She edits the movie while it is playing to make the outcome of that particular moment favorable for Kyuong. However, Kyuong still ends up explaining how her new water he design is going to work. And when she asks if this would work, the demonic property refuses to answer. After all, she has already made it clear that she can't see the future, though she does admit that the idea is kind of good. Eventually, Kung makes up her mind. She's going to materialize her idea into reality, and thus the construction began. It goes without saying that they had to face many uncalculated challenges during construction, resulting in several major accidents. They even got scammed once while gathering the right materials, and most painful of all was the trial and error phase.
In many failed attempts, they had to scrap the entire construction and start from the beginning. This not only drained their funds, but it was incredibly time-consuming too. Furthermore, there is already a shortage of workers, and the current labor force is already causing many problems. But Kong doesn't have the patience to accommodate excuses. She has given her word to the blue insect god, and she's going to honor it no matter the cost. Under her unshakable resolve and burning desire to uphold her word, her people have no option other than to obey her commands despite the many caveats. Even Nebula is surprised to see her taking things so seriously. He doesn't even remember asking her to build 4 wheels. I guess this much is expected. The human race is more goal-oriented, dedicating their lives to materializing their cause. Lizardmen, compared to them, are quite dim-witted and tactless. Anyhow, Kyuong's mention of the blue insect god actually helped increase the construction period. The other families of the automation castle were unlikely to resist much. After all, they must be feeling the various benefits coming from the ongoing construction since they live off business. The reason being, as the construction workers stay and more goods circulate, the scale of the commercial district expands further, eventually benefiting the families involved in trade. The journey to construct 4 water wheels wasn't smooth, but Kyuong's dedication and relentless pursuit helped bring this contraption to life. It is supposed to be the pinnacle of advanced structure in this world, a one-of-a-kind creation born in the automation castle. On the day of the inauguration, Kyuong and everyone else watch as the wheels begin moving. The invention of the 4 water wheels finally bore fruit. Kung apologizes to the insect god for using his name to get her desired outcome, but she is hoping that the Almighty is generous enough to forgive and would understand her intentions. Speaking of which, Nebula gets the notification the iron-making skills has advanced to level 2. This helps his civilization lay the path toward producing some high-grade iron. Not only does Nebula's civilization have the edge in producing ironware, but they have also established a currency of their own, as well as a writing system known as the Chung letter system. This officially makes Nebula's civilization the most developed and advanced out there compared to any other faction. Nebula isn't surprised in the slightest. He knows exactly what humans are capable of. This unyielding drive they possess is precisely why he chose them as his second species. A few days pass in the automation castle. We see a few elves visiting, surprised to hear a water he working all the way out here. This indicates that the water he must be massive for it to make such loud noises. A lizardman standing nearby further enlightens them, clarifying that not only are the water wheels being used to grind grain, but their power is also being utilized to manufacture weapons. The peddler then directs their attention toward the great quality silk he is selling. As soon as the elves get a feel of the cloth, they can instantly tell this is fire. Without thinking twice, they offer iron plates as a form of currency. According to them, these are the highest grade of iron plates exclusive to their home region. The peddler promptly weighs the iron plate he has been offered. As it turns out, the plate is low grade, at least by the peddler's standards. The peddler is utterly disappointed. He has no interest in trading with dubious people who aren't trustworthy. For some reason, the poor elves feel like they are being accused of deceiving him for no reason. They are confident about their iron plate quality. However, the peddler instructs them to visit the automation castle's central bank and exchange them for good iron plates. The elves believe that the peddler is speaking too highly of his relatively low-quality fabric. Of course, the peddler is beyond livid at having his craftsmanship questioned. He begins lecturing these guys on the amount of effort that goes into producing this fabric. While yelling, he finally scares those elves off. Meanwhile, Kung is watching the peddler from the shadows. It seems like this peddler has taken her previous lecture too seriously regarding value signal pricing. Seeing the elves, she suddenly remembers that it's not very common for them to travel all the way here. In order to learn how these elves actually do business, she decides to stalk them for a while. After following these guys, what she learns isn't very pleasant. Turns out these guys are literally scamming and smooth-talking newbie business owners. Kyung realizes that the automation castle's booming economy has also attracted scammers after all. She seriously wants to learn where these guys even came from. Meanwhile, Nebula receives a private message from a fellow player. It's a player named Eleldar, a god who controls the elven civilization. Nebula tries to decode the player's intentions. You see, the elven civilization is located on the far northern coast, meaning both civilizations are distant from each other, leaving no room for confrontation or territorial disputes. Eventually, he decides to accept the invitation, especially since he knows very little about the northern coast area beyond the wilderness. He may learn a tidbit or two. The player on the other end of the screen puts up an all-graceful and elegant facade, introducing himself just as gracefully.
For a moment, Nebula thinks the god of elves is actually trying to role-play his in-game character to match the vibe. As you may know, players who do role-playing basically immerse themselves in a role within the game, and this elven woman seems like one of those players. By the way, I can't really tell the gender of this freak. However, Nebula reciprocates the greetings. Elar is glad to meet a well-spoken personality, unlike Hegemonia, whom she considers nothing less than a barbarian. She even made sure to push his barbaric group out of the northern coast. Hearing this, Nebula internalizes Hegemonia's situation. After getting overpowered by Eleldar, Hegemonia tried to mess with him. This begs the question, is this gender-bender role-playing player actually that strong enough to push away a player like Hegemonia? Without further ado, Nebula questions her intentions for this meeting. Once again, this snake with a smile puts up an act of elegance and benevolence, laying out his terms. Only if Nebula agrees will his forces be spared. My guy drops the call right in her face without giving her any answer. Such a Chad move. Though he really wants to spy on what she is up to, he can't. The northern coast is a cold place, making it difficult for his insects to migrate there, and he can't just go by himself. He's got to keep watch over the automation castle.
Then again, Elar is in the same situation. She doesn't know much about him. This explains why there were elves roaming around the automation castle. And not, this elven god is actually a guy. Since Nebula still hasn't learned anything about this person's intentions, he decides to stay prepared for impending conflict. In the automation castle, the lord of the castle is having a meeting with the elven people. The elven representative introduces herself as Leona, the leader of this merchant guild. The lord doesn't think she needs to introduce herself since everyone knows her. He is certain that she must be here to discuss the elves who came to trade yesterday. In fact, he had been expecting her arrival. That's precisely why he had prepared a gift for her in advance. When she opens the box, there is a crystal inside. The lord claims to have found it in an ancient ruin. He is hoping that she would consider this humble gift and overlook the negligence. Jung acknowledges the value of the gift. However, she outright rejects it right to their faces, making it clear that she won't just sell her dignity away. Leona quickly bends down to pick up the precious stone and bluntly questions what more she desires. Internally, Kyung is trying to figure out why the elves want to trade with the automation castle all of a sudden, given that it is unprecedented to see them leave the northern coast. Directing her attention toward them, she makes things crystal clear. If they want to win her favor, they must follow the law instead of bribing their way out. Also, she doesn't want them to be too over the top. If they really want to mend the relationship, she suggests they buy these dolls representing the blue insect god. However, the elves refuse to make such a transaction since they are already devoted to the dancing shadow god. But as far as she is concerned, having faith in more than one god wouldn't hurt them. A few days have passed since this incident. In the castle, Saren visits Kong with news related to the elves. The elven chief is demanding an apology for the religious offense Kyung committed by asking elves to convert their religion. Of course, this gets under Kyung's nerves. Those guys are just pretty snakes hiding behind smiles. She decides to hold them accountable instead for starting all this. They were the ones who tried to bribe the lord of the automation castle. Looking out the window, Saren is certain that their messenger will visit once again within this ongoing rainy season. However, Kung refuses to meet them in any case. At this point, she is pretty certain what these elves are trying to pull, so she orders to get ready for the war ahead. A few days go by and the sky clears. It's just a regular sunny day when the soldiers on the castle wall notice an elven army marching toward the castle. The chief of the tribe, Hasadian, is the one leading the forces. After taking a first glance over the castle, the elven lord feels arrogant and overconfident. In order to reveal how stupid he actually is, he orders his army to march forth. An army of 300 clueless elven warriors charges forward. Eleldar is also there, feeling confident that he can overwhelm the opponent with numbers alone. The automation castle's walls may be high, but they are made of clay at the end of the day. Not to mention the automation castle barely has more than 150 soldiers. Given that the elves possess bows that can shoot over 80 paces, the bows humans possess are quite inferior. Meanwhile, Nebula is watching everything unfold, and he isn't without his preparations either. Soon enough, the chief of the tribe gets the bad news that there is an encampment of 70 soldiers marching from the canyon, facing the automation castle. Of course, the chief isn't thrilled to hear this. This clearly means that the enemy knew and was prepared for this moment. What he fails to understand is why there are only 70 soldiers coming. Then he gets another shocker. There are forces behind them, blocking their retreat route, trapping them in the middle. The ones blocking their path are the lizard men riding their cockatrices. The chief is in disbelief seeing such an unexpected turn of events. He hadn't expected that lizard men and humans would be working closely together. As for Aylar, Bro is about to his pants when he realizes that not only humans, but these lizard men are also his opponents. It looks like Aylar hasn't realized that Nebula controls both the humans and the lizard men. When he contacts Nebula to complain about it, my guy merely insists he just check the local player list. When Aylar does, the truth hits him like a thunderbolt out of the blue. Nebula is the one ruling this territory. Aylar had initially thought that Nebula was only the god of humans. However, when Nebula clarifies the confusion, the gender-bender dude is in utter disbelief. Seeing the lizard men heading toward them, the elven army is panicking and can't even keep it together. To make matters worse, those 70 soldiers who had been over the canyon have finally arrived and are ready to mow down all the elves with a barrage of arrows. As soon as the arrows are released, the bloodshed erupts. While the soldiers are all in utter confusion, the lizardmen army arrives to only make matters worse. The chief of the elven army quickly orders his men to maintain formation. However, the soldiers are too stunned to even move, and when Rak gets close enough, he summons forth his thunder, electrocuting the soldiers in his path. After his initial move, he jumps high into the sky and crashes down. The other soldiers follow suit, stabbing and cutting elven soldiers left and right like they are squashing flies. Lizard men are literally dog-walking these 300 useless warriors. The opponent is so terrified that they are running in the opposite direction to save their lives. This is the perfect opportunity to put the enemy down, and the next charge will mark the end of the battle. Stingray has also arrived to play its part with Rak, ordering his men for the final push. Eldar eventually concedes defeat. Hell, he doesn't even want to intervene in the battle himself via dissent. Nebula doesn't waste any time before making his demands clear. He wants information, skills, as well as resources. His blunt demands sound like daylight robbery, though he assures his opponent that he won't be needing everything all at once. Aylar has the option to stick together with Nebula. The genderbender begins weighing his options. At first, he thinks that trading info of Northern Territory isn't worth it, but then again, he is at a severe disadvantage right now. He has lost almost 300 warriors already, and it would be difficult to survive as a player with what he has left. On the other hand, Nebula has already got 2 species under his belt. If Nebula were to shake hands with some other player, Aylar knows he will be screwed. So as usual, he puts up this fake-ass act of graciousness and agrees to Nebula's terms. He is willing to cooperate and provide all 3 things Nebula had requested earlier. Aylar is hoping he forgives his past self's arrogance and that they can be on friendly terms from this point onward. Now that they have finally come to terms, he is willing to spill all the juicy details regarding the North Shore. Nebula learns that there is an alliance that exists there involving 3 players: Salongos, Limchunik, and Elodar himself. Player Salongos is currently ruling over the rare centaur race. It seems like Nebula knows little about the species. Even though the whole race has the advantage of being mounted soldiers, they have difficulties when it comes to expanding their population and resources. It's a race Nebula would have never chosen. Then again, it's equally tough to fight against. Then there is player Limchunik, who rules over a dumb species called ogres, a kind of species that possesses nothing beyond sheer size and brute strength. The average intelligence of the ogre hovers around 10, though they have managed to raise their intelligence through the blessing of the small domain. Speaking of which, Nebula has also given a variety of blessings to humans as his second race. So blessings of a small domain would make even dumb creatures like ogres smart enough to advance their civilization. He deduces that Limchunik is the strongest among the other 2 players mentioned. With this in mind, he assumes that it must be Limchunik who fought Hegemonia. However, it turns out that isn't the case. Hegemonia shares borders exclusively with Salongos and Aylar, leaving no room for a direct confrontation between those 2 nations. Nebula quickly understands what transpired. The 3 members of the alliance had been preparing to attack Hegemonia together, but Hegemonia was forced to confront Nebula before that plan could materialize. Now that Hegemonia is out of the picture, Limchunik has turned his attention to Elodar. He is demanding an exorbitant amount of offerings if Aylar wishes to keep the alliance afloat. It was quite difficult for the elven god to meet these demands, eventually leading to friction with Nebula. Nebula knows that the Fadas favors Salongos over Eldar. This bias likely stems from the fact that the Songos are a nomadic race. You see, both elves and ogres are settlers. The power of a settler civilization is determined by the size of their land. Therefore, Chunik plans to annex the current Salongos territory to gain a territorial advantage. Since Eldar is of no use to him in this regard, Chunik intends to discard him like trash. After grasping the dire situation he is in, the poor elven god slumps into despair, though his worries are soon rendered moot because Nebula extends a hand of alliance. For a moment, Eldar feels enlightened only to remember his grim reality. His major forces as well as his high priest have been wiped out, and he is unsure if he can contribute much to the alliance. Fortunately, it seems Nebula has already identified Elar's current advantage. He reminds Elar of his god name, the Dancing Shadow God, which grants him the small dominion of arts. Elar confirms this, but remains skeptical about how it can be of help. Nebula leans in and whispers the juicy details into the elf's ear, leaving us with nothing but suspense. The scene then transitions to the northern regions where we see the Centurus general standing atop a hill. The prophet of the centaurs is also there to enlighten the general about a prophecy that has descended. In the near future, this land will be visited by a king. When this king arrives, the world will be reorganized. Those currently in power will lose their status, while those who travel freely within the lands will lose their way. This king is someone everyone will bow their heads to. He will rule over the lands, standing beneath only the gods themselves. The general arrogantly proclaims himself to be that king, asserting that only the gods will stand beside him. However, his confidence soon fades when he learns the grim news. He isn't the fortunate one. Hearing this, the general quickly deduces that the prophesied king must be one of the lizard men from the black-scaled tribe. But the prophet debunks this assumption. He believes the being rising in the north is far more powerful. The one destined to become king is a giant ogre, possessing astronomical strength and a sheer size that would dwarf anyone standing next to him. He is stronger than any centaur and possesses intelligence surpassing that of the elves. Naturally, the tribe chief of the centaurs doesn't like the fact that he will be nothing more than a lackey for that massive brute. He is so enraged by the prophecy that he literally strikes down the prophet for foretelling such an unpleasant future. He, the great Tamaridu, representing the centaurs, is the only one with the drive to stand at the pinnacle. He will bow to no one but the gods. It turns out this prophecy was staged by Nebula and performed through Eldar. Now that Eldar has done what was asked of him, Tamaridu is beyond livid and refuses to accept the prophecy. All that is left for Nebula to do is materialize this prophecy into reality. Cutting back to Tamaridu, he is treading through the treacherous terrain of the northern cold wilderness. He is trying to reach the high peaks of the northern mountains which are supposed to represent prestige. However, he feels his strength failing him, unable to climb any further. To make matters worse, a boulder sliding down the path ruins his ascent. Thankfully, it was just a dream Tamaridu was having, but it is clear that his nightmares are a sign of his inevitable downfall. Still, he isn't willing to drop his desire to become king. Just as he is reflecting on his perilous situation, a guard enters with news. A guest is requesting to meet him. A while later, the guest finally meets with Tamaridu. Well, it wasn't just one guest. There were people from 2 different nations who visited him. The first was an elf from the same tribe as the deceased prophet, a green-eyed elf. He too spoke of the prophecy, but his words were quite different from those of the late prophet. This green-eyed elf claims that the ogre chief, Kyun, will inevitably become king. However, they can prevent this prophecy from becoming reality by having Tamaridu become the king of the north instead. The next guest was human from Automation Castle. This human already viewed Tamaridu as the sole ruler and king of the north, bringing tributes and gifts befitting a centaur king. Then the third and final guest arrived, a lizard man named Owen, representing the black-scaled tribe. Tamaridu assumed this lizard man was also there to acknowledge him as the future king. Contrary to what the horsemen thought, Owen was merely there to suggest he drop the dream of becoming king. Tamaridu questions the reason. Perhaps he isn't worthy to take the throne. Or perhaps it is necessary for him to receive the acknowledgement of the chiefs of different tribes. If so, he has already been acknowledged by humans and elves. The only one remaining is the lizard man. With all earnestness, Owen claims that his tribe chief, Rak, would approve of him right away. However, he personally believes that Tamaridu should not pursue this path of ascending to the throne. Unsurprisingly, Owen's denouncing tone only served to infuriate Tamaridu, but our lizard decided to back up his words with solid reasoning. To him, it's not a matter of qualifications or strength Tamaridu may possess. It's a matter of whether the god approves of him as king. This news struck Tamaridu like a thunderbolt. He failed to understand why his god, the rushing without hesitation god, would disapprove of him. Owen reckoned the reason was simple. Just as tribes are classified according to a power hierarchy on Earth, a hierarchy exists among the gods too. In simpler terms, the god of the ogres is considered superior to the god of the centaurs. That does it. Tamaridu's lid finally flips. He cannot digest the simple yet harsh reality of this universe. It is simple. The weak must always bow to the strong, or they get devoured. He swings his axe right at Owen to intimidate him, hating the fact that Owen is looking down upon his god. But our lizard fella is as cool as a cucumber. He doesn't find anything blasphemous about his words. He was merely stating the cold truth about the hierarchy of gods. If Tamaritu is truly pissed about his god's situation, he better take his frustration out on the deity who is constantly suppressing his god. Tamaru may be a brainless brute, but deep down he understands the depth of Owen's words. The recurring dream he was having was just a negative revelation. Even though his god knows of his feelings, he didn't give him a revelation encouraging him to become the king. Instead, that boulder falling off the mountain was a sign that he wanted him to give up on the idea. At last, he accepts Owen's words as true and seeks further guidance. Before leaving, Owen gaslights the guy about his situation. He gives the example of black-scaled warriors who would go against their commander's orders if it meant their rebellion served a greater cause. And that's exactly what Owen wants Tamaridu to do. After putting some thought into it, Tamaridu finally realizes what he is supposed to do. He must become a king. He must become a king for the sake of his god. He must take the path full of thorns that his god never desired him to take. Meanwhile, Nebula and Elodar are watching everything go as smoothly as they desired. The fact is, Nebula used Elar's small dominion of arts to achieve these satisfactory results. The elven god is astonished that our boy used the dominion of arts way better than Elar could have done himself. You see, the small dominion of arts is all about swaying people's hearts with art. And art may take the form of murals, sculptures, or prophecies. Nebula used prophecies to manipulate his opponent. Even the species that other players control can be manipulated to do things their god never desired. The Solongos player who controls the centaur species is going to have a tough time because of his high priest rebelling. Though Elar isn't sure if that much is enough to achieve their objective, Nebula remains confident. While they successfully manipulated the species of different players, they still aren't sure if they can stop Solongos from ruining their plans. But Nebula has already thought of this possibility too. You see, Solongos is aware of how much his centaur species can grow in terms of economy and technological advancements. After all, his species is nomadic, while the civilization of ogres, who are settlers by nature, will be far ahead in that regard. Because of this, Solongos wouldn't be able to defend against the civilization of ogres in near future. That's exactly why Solongos will see Tamaridu's rebellion as a blessing in disguise. He currently has the chance to stop Centaur's inevitable doom. Cutting to the man of the hour, Bro is begging for forgiveness from Lim Chunik on behalf of his rebellious high priest, Tamaridu. However, the big guy assures him it's not on him. He claims the fault actually lies with himself for overlooking the elven god's plot after he allied with Nebula. Regardless, he is confident that in the battle for the throne between Tamaridu and Kun, the outcome is set in stone. So there is nothing for Solongos to apologize for. Well, that isn't exactly why Solongos was apologizing. Bro was sorry because he is damn sure Tamaridu is going to wipe the floor with Kun. Both players are confident in their high priests, but only time will tell who survives the battle to claim the throne. Eventually, the day of reckoning arrives. It is the day Tamaridu and his soldiers are ready to unleash hell. They begin by wiping out all the mercenary goblins in their path who were supposedly working for the ogres. As they engage in battle, the ogres suddenly pop out of hiding. The centaurs realize too late that the goblins were just a distraction. Those massive giants swing their heavy weapons, crushing the centaurs mercilessly. On the flip side, Tamaridu steps up to the front lines and beheads multiple ogres with just a single swipe of his sword. It is clear that these rank-and-file ogres are no match for him. He only considers the ogre chief, Kijijin, to be his true rival. Speaking of which, Kijun has also joined the battlefield. He is livid that Tamaridu betrayed the trust between their two nations, and he wants this phony pony to pay with his blood. Both combatants lunge at each other with weapons raised high, knocking the arms from each other's grasp, leaving them both unarmed. Tamaridu proceeds to strike his opponent with his solid fists. However, the big guy dodges the hit and grabs Tamaru by the neck. With a single maneuver, he completely locks Tamaridu in a chokehold and twists his head, killing the horse guy as quickly as the battle started. Cutting to our duo of gods, they had also been tuned into this one-sided massacre. Even though Eldar thought he knew the outcome, he finds himself shocked out of his mind because that damn horse wasn't able to deal an ounce of damage to his opponent. Ogres might be strong and have their intelligence boosted by blessings, but centaurs are still a rare species and elite fighters. Anyhow, Ilar is now concerned about Nebula's main force, which are the lizard men. Since lizard men are weak to the cold, it is highly unlikely they can hold out against ogres. My guy clarifies that he never intended to pit lizard men against ogres directly. Of course, Ilar doesn't realize what Nebula's implying. When he questions Nebula's intentions, my guy diverts the topic by asking the elf about his rank in the game. Well, Ilar is quite embarrassed to say it out loud, but he is supposedly ranked 3,400th. Internally, Nebula doesn't think that is bad at all, though it isn't an exceptional feat either. This also clears up a misconception for Nebula. He used to think players were chosen based on their ranking. Still, saying players are chosen purely through RNG doesn't make sense either. Two top players getting chosen out of thousands doesn't sound like a coincidence. Pushing this unsolved mystery aside, Nebula looks forward to Ilar's continued cooperation. We then cut to Lim Chun. Currently, he is busy ogling Nebula's profile. Since Nebula was a top-ranked player, it's not surprising this fat ass recognizes who he is staring at. Chunik isn't thrilled to go up against a high player so early in the game. However, he believes he has been blessed by the gacha gods. Having received the small domain of birds, he knows the insects and lizard men that Nebula rules over are susceptible to cold, and Chunik wants to weaponize Nebula's weakness against him. He has already started doing the necessary preparations. He may be fighting a top-ranked player, but Chunik is also proud of the 20th rank he used to possess. Winter is almost on the horizon, leaving Nebula no choice but to initiate a battle. And Chunik is ready. Suddenly, Chunik notices that a nearby elven village has caught fire. It isn't just one occurrence. Many settlements are burning simultaneously. Chunik quickly figures out what Nebula is doing. It is a slash-and-burn tactic, also known as the Scorched Earth strategy. Applying this tactic, a player intentionally destroys all the areas that could aid the opponent. While Nebula is chill about it, Elar can't stand seeing his villages burned to ashes. Nebula assures him that he has already evacuated the elves. What worries Eldar more is the fact that using a Scorched Earth tactic this early in the game is unprecedented. Nebula confirms it because using this tactic early in the beginning doesn't usually work the way it is intended. However, this situation is exceptional. Since the opponent is on the North Shore right now, it will be hard for them to secure food supplies. The Black Scale tribe controls all the trade in the automation castle. And now that the nearby elven villages have been wiped out, the ogres can't rob or trade for goods. The ogres' greatest weakness is that they need a massive amount of food to sustain themselves. And with winter already on the horizon, they will be short on supplies. That fool Chunik thought our boy was weak to the cold. But little does he know, the lack of resources is the real killer. Nebula also gives credit to Eldar. Without him, this strategy wouldn't have worked. Under normal circumstances, a player would have to burn their own land for this strategy to work. But the ogres just so happen to be in the land of elves, sparing Nebula his own resources. The trade-off is worth it. The opponent will inevitably fall with the arrival of a second winter. The scene transitions to a goblin village. The entire place has descended into chaos with ogres invading. These hungry giants are here to devour the poor little guys and rob them of their supplies. With time, most of the goblins have already evacuated with their supplies. When Ogre Chief Kyun hears this news, he doesn't feel good about their situation. What's worse, their god hasn't responded to their prayers, as if he deserted them altogether. The ogres have started to die from malnutrition, and Chunik isn't able to do anything other than watch the remaining survivors suffer. Eventually, he swallows his pride and contacts his old friend, as well as his rival Solongos. Just when the guy requests his former friend for a little bit of reinforcement, Solongos breaks the bad news. He has already lost most of his forces. After his high priest, Tamaridu, got ripped apart by Kyun. Losing his soldiers was bad enough, but the situation spiraled when lizard men conquered the Centaur's land. On a positive note, Solongos is glad his former friend contacted him because there was something he wanted to discuss. Turns out Eldar had contacted Solongos and offered an opportunity to form an alliance with Nebula under the stipulation that Solongos help him fight against Chunik. Hearing this, Chunik almost thought he was screwed, only for his former friend to assure him that he rejected the deal. Becoming someone's pawn is the last thing he would want. Not to mention, he wanted to honor the time he spent with his friend Chunik before their conflict. Even now, Solongos wants to revive the old bond they once shared and launch an attack after combining the last bit of strength they have left. Chunik doesn't think it's a bad idea at all. In fact, he is excited. Even if they lack an army, they can battle Nebula head-on. It won't be a simple clash of two opposing civilizations. It will be a battle between the gods. Chunik plans to descend onto the battlefield to chip away at the majority of Nebula's forces. Furthermore, Elar is out of the equation already. Since he had fought Nebula before, his divinity level must have dropped to the point that he is no longer eligible for the descent option. This puts Nebula alone against two other gods. His high divinity level will be overshadowed when two gods descend at once. And so both ogres and centaurs manage to scrape together the last remaining bits of their forces and finally march right into the battlefield. From the front, they spot their opponent has also arrived. Tunic doesn't waste a single moment before descending into Kyun, and Salongos does the same. Together, both gods lunge at their lone target, Nebula's high priest. Our boy doesn't hesitate for a moment before descending into Rak's body and dodging the onslaught. He slips around like a hot knife through butter and electrocutes both of his opponents on the spot. That's all it took to take those two goofball gods down in an instant. With their defeat, both gods turn into statues after being sealed. You see, if a player dies while they are descended, they lose an astronomical amount of experience points, making their divinity level fall severely. If the divinity level hits level 1, the players will be sealed. In order to truly kill both of the gods, Nebula shatters their statues, killing them once and for all. If these statues aren't shattered, then the gods could be revived by undoing the sealing process, but Nebula didn't think they were of any value, so he turned them into dust. With them dying, he levels up, putting a smile on his face. The cause of his amusement is due to the fact that he is as stacked as a player can get in this game. Killing the two gods has also allowed him to consume one of their small domains out of many, though he will get only one randomly. As soon as he confirms it, the gacha gods bestow him with the small domain of swamp, while the second is the small domain of birds. The swamp is just fair, but the bird one seals the deal. It's all Nebula had wanted. Perhaps he should replace the blessing of insects he bestowed upon the humans and lizards. But then he decides to save the best for the next generation. Nebula has finally managed to deal with the 3 players who posed any inconvenience to him. With the current situation taken care of, he decides to step up his game further. He lays his eyes on the west. According to the info he received from the Locust, 5 players are divided into 3 forces, and they are fighting each other. However, he decides not to stick his nose in and let those guys deal with each other, waiting until they actually pose a serious threat to his territory. As for the east, it's all ocean. His current priorities are conquering and expanding on land. Narrowing down his options, the north and south are the 2 left. He needs to conquer these 2 before the NPC tribes situate themselves there completely. However, Rak can't be in the north and south simultaneously, so taking help from the elves for the northern side of things sounds doable. Many days have likely passed and the scene is set in the far north, where the cold weather is merciless. The remaining elves have been delegated to inhabit this place, though they aren't satisfied with the decision. The winters here are too long, and starting farming again is going to take a lot of time. Not to mention, they are constantly under the threat of ogres and goblins aiming for their necks. They all want answers from their chief, Linar, who sits silently absorbing all the complaints. He finally breaks the silence with good news. The prophecy foretold that someone from the south is on their way to help the green-eyed elf tribe. As if on cue, a soldier reports sighting a group of humans approaching. This confirms to Leonard that these characters are likely here to assist them. Without further ado, the elves stand outside in the cold to receive their guests with due honor. When the humans finally reach them and dismount their horses, it turns out that the one leading the group was the very lord of Automation Castle, Qiang. Since both lords have seen each other before, it spares them introductions and a lot of formalities. Leonard promptly proceeds to welcome his guests inside his tent. However, Saren is called forth by his mistress. The overly protective Chad steps forward and insists on surveilling the tent for assassins before his goddess Gracious enters. Of course, Leonard isn't in any position to object, so Saren goes straight in. A while later, both lords finally settle down in the tent. In order to keep the dialogue alive, Lanner questions the purpose of their visit. Kung hopes that he already knows through the prophecy. Still, she clarifies that her blue insect god wants her to help weak and marginalized civilizations such as the elves. Poor Leonard isn't sure if she is actually here to help or merely patronizing them. She then points towards the farming tools and weapons she has brought along, as well as grain seeds that can grow in cold weather. Of course, Leonard feels beyond happy, but his moment of joy takes a serious nosedive when she mentions the price tag. Her god may have tasked her to help the impoverished elves, but doing so without profit wouldn't make it enticing for her. Leonard makes it clear that they are broke. They have already exhausted their last remaining resources just traveling here. Naturally, Kong pretends to withdraw her offer. She must leave because time is also a valuable commodity she would rather not waste. However, Leonard isn't playing this guessing game anymore. He would rather appreciate it if she came clean about the real purpose of her visit. After all, she wouldn't have come to this barren land if it held nothing of value. The elf spreads the map of this barren land and points at a certain location consisting of natural resources. There exists a strip mine rich with iron, And the surrounding area is also very green with tall trees symbolically reflecting the fertility of the area, meaning they can also start farming. Leonor is willing to trade anything they can produce at a bargain price. However, Kyung wasn't so sure if she should be trading her actual goods in the present for something that only exists hypothetically. As reassurance, the Elven Lord gives his promise and personally guarantees this as the elf known as Leonor. Eventually, Kung accepts the offer because she can see the potential. Though she wouldn't just take verbal promises as a guarantee, she wants some tangible evidence of their promise. This is where the Elven Lord feels a little hesitant. You see, the value of the iron ores and trees in the future far surpasses the value of what he is currently getting. He is basically selling off his descendants' future. Then again, if not for this trade, there may not be any future at all. There has to be something valuable about this trade, or else his god wouldn't have given him the revelation about it. When both parties finally imprint the contract paper with their handprints, the deal is sealed. Both vow to honor and uphold the contract.